That was the inquiry from the BBC. I'm Saroja Coelho here on CBC Radio 1. Have a great day.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio, and we are live downtown on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app, or on YouTube this morning. 3 minutes to 6 a.m. The show's on until 8:37, and if you need us on the morning commute, the number remains the same for the morning, 788-3093. You'll be calling Corey Funk, who covers the commute on the program. Good morning, Corey. Corey's also our show director. Good morning to Abby Adeyemi, who's also in this morning behind the controls, our technical producer, and Abby also covers weather on the air. And good morning to Kevin Nipatebo, saying hello to you on that YouTube stream and making bunny ears behind Corey's head. That's our control room team. Heather Wells is also in on our newsroom team, and she is here this morning with our headlines. Hi there, Heather.
Hi, good morning. Well, calls today for more transparency after Premier Wab Kinew refuses to say how much the Manitoba government has agreed to pay to lease space in a new medical tower planned for Portage Place. True North Real Estate is spending $2/3 of $1 billion redeveloping the downtown Winnipeg Mall. The province is helping out with a 35-year lease. True North pegs in the tens of millions of dollars a year. Now, the Premier says disclosing the precise amount could impact leases with other landlords. We'll hear more about that, more reaction coming up. And a North End community activist says Winnipeg police should improve communication with people in her neighborhood before buying another police helicopter. Air One's been flying for 14 years, and police say parts to repair the helicopter are getting harder to find. Mary Burton says the police helicopter still causes trauma. So we'll hear from her coming up in our next news at 6:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Weather-wise today in Winnipeg, a 30% chance of showers this morning. It was just spitting about half an hour ago out there. And it's going to be windy once again. Winds will be northwest 30 to 50 near noon. Our high today is 17 degrees. Well, this morning on the show, did you watch a little last night down south? The vice presidential candidates in the race had their debate yesterday, Tim Walz and J.D. Vance. We're going to hear more analysis of that coming up. In addition, a Winnipeg organization that offers services to newcomers is hoping to get people talking this weekend. They've got a conversation series set up. We're going to learn all about what that is and why it's been created. And then Israel, assessing its response after Iran fired ballistic missiles into the country. That's next on World Report.
On cue.
It's comedic how hard it's been for me to find anything.
If you watch the show The Bear, you'll know Liza Colon-Zayas. She plays a middle-aged line cook named Tina who is challenged by her mentors to learn new skills as a chef. She'll tell you how her character has inspired her to learn new skills and to reinvent herself.
Q with Tom Power this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland and on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Rockets are flying over the border between Israel and Lebanon. Hezbollah is firing at Israel. The Israeli military is firing at Hezbollah, and it is sending more troops into southern Lebanon to join its ground offensive as the war escalates. The world is waiting to see how Israel will respond to Iran and the ballistic missiles it fired overnight. The CBC's Crystal Gomansing is tracking developments in London.
Video on social media shows craters in Tel Aviv not far from the Mossad headquarters. The aftermath of the Iranian assault.
Will be a severe retaliation coming from Israel.
Zibi Hadavelli is Israel's ambassador to the UK. She says the strike should not be dismissed because no Israelis were killed.
The intentions matter, and the intentions of the Iranian regime was to target Israeli civilians.
An estimated 181 ballistic missiles were fired at Israel Tuesday night. Nearly all were intercepted. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Iran made a big mistake by attacking Israel and is vowing to strike back. Iran's chief of staff warned against that. Mohammad Bagheri says if Israel makes another move against Iran's sovereignty and territorial integrity, last night's strikes will be repeated with more intensity and Israel's infrastructure will be targeted. Sanem Vakil is a Middle East expert with Chatham House.
Iran does not have the conventional military weapons to stand up or to fight against Israel. So the axis of resistance, Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, were Iran's deterrent capabilities.
With Hezbollah engaged with Israel in Lebanon, the Houthi group made a statement. It says the United States and the United Kingdom's continued support of Israel is putting their interests under fire. Crystal Gamansing, CBC News, London.
There were more Israeli airstrikes in Gaza overnight. Medics in the Palestinian territory say at least 50 people were killed. Some were in a school sheltering displaced families in Gaza City. Others were in areas near Khan Yunis raided by Israeli tanks. The IDF also mounted an overnight operation at Hebron in the West Bank. Officials told the Times of Israel soldiers were preparing to demolish the homes of suspects from yesterday's attack in Tel Aviv, where at least 7 people were killed. The Palestinian news agency Wafa reports 5 people were detained. It says 3 Palestinian medics were severely beaten by Israeli security forces. The U.S. vice presidential debate was policy-focused in New York last night. Democratic Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and Republican Senator J.D. Vance debated immigration, abortion, and what happened in the 2020 election. The CBC's Richard Madden was watching, and he joins me now from Washington. And Richard, walk us through the debate.
Yeah, well, it was surprisingly civil, very Midwestern nice, but Governor Walz seemed nervous at the start, while Senator Vance came across much smoother. Now, the two mostly avoided attacking each other, focusing more on the top of the ticket on issues ranging from the Middle East, abortion, immigration, and economic records. Now, Walz admitted he misspoke about visiting China during the Tiananmen Square massacre back in the 80s, and his cringy misstep about gun violence went viral. Listen.
Yeah, I sat in that office with those Sandy Hook parents. I've become friends with school shooters. I've seen it.
And Walz also missed many opportunities to challenge Vance, but there was one key moment when he brought up Trump's attempt to overturn the 2020 election.
He is still saying he didn't lose the election. I would just ask that. Did he lose the 2020 election?
Tim, I'm focused on the future. Did Kamala Harris censor Americans from speaking their mind in the wake of the 2020 COVID situation?
That is a damning non-answer.
It's a damning non-answer for you to not talk about censorship.
Now, it's worth noting Vance admitted his party needs to do better attracting female voters, which may explain why he avoided being an aggressive attack dog that he's known for in Republican circles.
So how could this all impact the race?
Yeah, it's unclear how much this will move the needle. There was no knockout punch, but Senator Vance was clearly more prepared. He's used to sparring with reporters and debating, while Governor Walz has been bubble-wrapped by the Harris campaign and has mostly kept a low profile. But if anything, Vance's performance has elevated his stock within his party as a potential heir apparent to Trump in 2028.
All right. Thank you, Richard.
Thanks.
The CBC's Richard Madden in Washington. A California doctor charged in the death of Matthew Perry will appear in front of a judge today. Dr. Mark Chavez is expected to formally plead guilty to 1 count of conspiracy to distribute ketamine. He allegedly conspired with another doctor to supply Perry with the drug. Prosecutors say the accused took advantage of Perry's addiction issues. Perry died last October. The autopsy report shows acute effects of ketamine as contributing to his death. For years, experts have been warning about how climate change can affect our health. And for seniors, that risk is elevated. They are especially vulnerable to heat waves and extreme weather disasters. Now seniors across Canada are demanding the government do better to keep them safe. Science reporter Anand Ram has more.
A cacophony for the climate. There were horns and hey-hays as hundreds of Canadian seniors marched in Toronto and across the country to demand action on climate change.
So sad because we destroyed this world and then they are struggling.
Mi-Kyung Kim feels for future generations, but sees in her own community young people overlooking climate action to focus on success.
We have to shout justice together. It's the best way we can survive.
The measure of any society is in the state of your weakest, most vulnerable, the poorest among you.
Also in the crowd, activist and retired broadcaster and scientist David Suzuki. His call to action for Seniors for Everyone: you can make a difference.
You know, a lot of people say, I'm not going to do anything, we're a drop in the bucket. Yeah, but enough drops. You can do big things.
Why was it important to be here today?
Well, I mean, there's nothing more important.
Jim Davis feels the same, but he says the message shouldn't just be for the converted.
Hopefully we can convince the neighbors, not the people that are in total denial, but people who are somewhat open-minded. It's tiring, but it's still very needful to do.
Another world is possible.
Seniors are especially vulnerable to heat waves and flooding, but with high voter turnouts in federal elections, many here know that shouting for change can't replace voting for it. Anand Ram, CBC News, Toronto.
Now to an investigation CBC News has been working on for a year and a half. A Canadian activist and a group of MPs have been working together trying to secure the freedom and safety of a group of female politicians from Afghanistan. Our chief correspondent, Adrian Arsenault, gained access to their secret mission.
Group hug. Okay.
Hugs at the arrivals terminal in Toronto and flowers and Canadian flags handed to a family from Afghanistan. And who should be in the welcome party but 5 MPs? 2 Liberals, a Conservative, a member of the Bloc Québécois and the Green Party. The only one missing is a member of the NDP who wanted to be there but couldn't make it. These are people who've been secretly working together for nearly 2 years, all in the name of helping Afghan women, themselves politicians, escape the clutches of the Taliban. Conservative Alex Ruff served 2 tours in Afghanistan and knows this mission matters.
So forget about the partisan baloney. This is about what's doing the right thing to help these former Afghan MPs.
There were 69 female Afghan MPs until the Taliban took back control in 2021. Honored women suddenly hunted. Most escaped through Pakistan to other countries, but nearly a dozen remained trapped in Afghanistan. The Canadian politicians felt compelled to try to save women Canada had supported. It's taken frustrating years of securing visas and permissions and a terrible turn: the murder in Kabul of one of the Afghan MPs, Mursal Nabizada, while they all waited. This is Alexis Brunel-Duceppe of The Bloc.
We were in shock when we lost that woman. We all talked together. We were in shock. That's when we decided to go public.
The only reason you're hearing these voices now is there's good news. That family at the airport are the slain MP's mother and 3 little brothers, safe now.
So after school, he wants to go to university and also make her parents proud, the same that Mursal did.
And more Afghan female MPs are now here, rebuilding lives. In a world of acute political divisions, there remains real togetherness. Adrian Arsenault, CBC News, Toronto.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime at cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Some light rain falling in downtown Winnipeg now. Good morning, everyone. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team here at Information Radio. You're on CBC, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. It is Wednesday, October 2nd, and we'll get into our forecast in some more detail in a moment. This hour on the program, a local organization wants to get people talking. The Seven Oaks Immigrant Services is offering something called Conversation Clubs. We're going to learn more about what they are and how they hope to strengthen our community. Stay tuned. In addition, more analysis of last night's vice presidential debate in the United States, so stay tuned for that. And coming up at 10 to 7 this morning, still more analysis of the top story on World Report today, which is Israel and what it will do next, assessing its response after Iran fired ballistic missiles at the country. Stay tuned. We'll talk about the escalation of violence in the Middle East. Right now, though, Heather Wells is in with our local news headlines. Good morning, Heather.
Good morning. Well, a former trustee in the Mountain View School Division says the current board is failing students. Lynn Smith served on that school board in the Dauphin area for 20 years. The current trustees have been under scrutiny since April, when one trustee gave a presentation claiming residential schools started as a good thing. Most recently, 4 trustees decided to ban all flags except Canadian, Manitoba, and school flags. We're going to hear more about what's been going on there in the Mountain View School Division. And drought is taking a toll again on Manitoba Hydro. The Crown Corporation says it lost $157 million during the fiscal year ending in March. We'll hear more in our next local news at 6:30.
All right, thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
And let's go to Abby Adeyemi now and say good morning to Corey Funk as well. Hello, you two. How are you doing this morning?
Good morning. How are you doing today?
Good. Yeah, pretty good. How about you, Corey?
You're doing good. Good. I still, like a fool, wore socks and sandals in today.
Yeah, that's not bad. It's not bad. Abby's about to tell us. We kind of have a middle-of-the-road forecast. I went for the full fall stuff. I pulled out all my sweaters and all that last night, but today's going to be kind of a little bit lower than seasonal normal.
Yeah, lower than seasonal. We're expecting cloudy conditions to start the day. Then we'll see some sunshine across board. Breezy conditions from north down to the south. Winnipeg currently at 13 degrees this time. We saw a bit of rain spitting here and there earlier. We should see some cloudy conditions. That would clear up. We still have the slight chance of showers hanging back with us. Then we'll see a mix of sun and clouds by the afternoon period. It will become breezy as you get close to your lunch break. We warm up to 17 degrees. Seasonal for this time is around 14. A few clouds would hang over us as we get into the overnight period. Then we drop to 2. In other regions, the northern region, I'm going to say this, will start to see flurries and light snow mixed with rain, Marcy. That's coming their way. Thompson is currently at 0 and Clare Churchill is at 3 under cloudy conditions, while the southern part, just a slim chance of showers in the forecast. Then we'll see a mix of sun and clouds. Breezy conditions after the noon period. Highs close to 18 degrees.
Okay, Abby, thank you.
Thank you.
First time we've heard snow set on the air, I think, in a while. Hey, Corey?
Oh, man.
The commute is good, right?
Yeah, commute is so far quite good. No snow out there on the roads or anything like that. But if you do see something going on, if you're walking, biking, driving, you see something, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number, 204-788-3093.
Well, up first on the show this morning, as I mentioned, a local organization wants to get people talking. The Seven Oaks Immigrant Services Group is offering a gathering place for people on work or study permits. So they've created something called conversation clubs, and they describe it as a place for newcomers to connect with others or work on their English skills. The clubs are free. They're partially funded by the provincial government. Jana Mickey is with us up early this morning on Zoom, Program Director for the Seven Oaks Immigrant Services. Good morning.
Good morning.
So I gave sort of just a brief outline, but why did you guys think there was a need to start these conversation clubs?
A couple reasons. One, temporary resident visas aren't eligible for the federal funding to join formal LINC classes or ESL or English as a second alternative language classes. And even if they were, there's really long wait lists for our classes. And so we've been running on the weekends, on Saturdays, our conversation classes or conversation clubs. This one's particularly targeting temporary resident visas, as you'd mentioned.
So what's the response when people are in the clubs, given that, as you said, they don't have access to other spaces to practice these kinds of skills and to connect with others?
Really good. They don't want them to stop, but unfortunately, we have a limited capacity. Our staff are the ones that facilitate them for the most part. We're always looking for volunteers so we can actually run more and longer. On this Saturday, like we mentioned, I believe there's 3 conversation clubs happening for the temporary resident visas, but we also have 4 conversation classes for all other statuses in terms of immigration.
So if someone wants to volunteer and they're thinking maybe I could help, what are the requirements and what kinds of skills are you looking for?
Being able to hold a conversation. So the conversation clubs really focus on listening and speaking, much less on reading and writing. And it often is what the participants want to talk about. And so anyone who can facilitate conversations, of course, retired teachers, folks who have a facilitation or teaching background makes it a lot more easier. But there is training that we can offer at no cost as well to help support this.
What's the need for it? Do you have a sense of, as you said, you're trying to keep things going and it's volunteer led, but what do you notice about the demand?
Oh, it's high. It's really high. When we did this last year, this season, we had over 80 coming on a Saturday, and so then we had to look at capacity again and wait lists. So it's in high demand. They're fun conversation classes. Like as you mentioned earlier, there's a lot of networking happening. You're meeting people in similar situations, or just meeting other folks, and just making some friends and networks. So that in itself is worth it. It also allows us the opportunity to share information that they might not get elsewhere. Information about truth and reconciliation. We're all treaty people. That's information that we will ask our facilitators and our teachers and whoever else is volunteering to ensure that conversation is happening.
Are most of the people that are coming to the club to get together and in need of the services, are they coming from the immediate area? You guys are out in Seven Oaks, I mentioned. Or are they coming from all over the city?
Yeah, so we service and support the northwest quadrant of Winnipeg, which is quite high in terms of destination for newcomers and always has been. But we're finding folks coming from downtown and other areas of the city. It's a little difficult because we're in the north of north, and so sometimes it's 2 buses to get there. But people are coming from all over.
And when did you guys actually start these? When was your first one?
8 years ago.
Oh yeah, it goes back that far.
Yeah, it goes back that far. And again, it was to support the demand for language programs, and we have a finite number of seats that people can participate in for the whole year. And the waiting lists were so long, people were waiting, up to 300 days sometimes. And so we said, let's offer them an opportunity to at least learn to practice listening and speaking while connecting with others in the community.
What languages have you been offering in the last, I guess, year? What's it looked like in terms of what the needs are? What languages are most in demand?
Well, the conversation classes are done in English, so it doesn't really matter on who facilitates it. But we've had staff and volunteers speak some of the language that the participants are, and that's Ukrainian, Punjabi, Persian, Pashto, Vietnamese as well. Yeah, our area, we have a quite high Ukrainians population, folks that come from the Punjab area, and recently people from Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm. If you had a dream, Jana, then obviously you mentioned more volunteers, but I think you also said more space. What do you need to keep these going? Or would the ideal thing be to have more programming in our community that would be formal so people could have an access and a way in there?
Yeah, so formal classes are more intense and obviously better outcomes because it's between 6 to 15 hours a week, and that costs money, and that's both provincial and federal funding. But as mentioned, we'll probably always run these combo classes as they do suit some families' lifestyles. We run them for about 6 to 8 weeks, then we take a break, and then we run them for 6 to 8 weeks again. So for some folks, just having that little bite size to carve out from their very busy life, it's manageable. And we run it on Saturdays. We find if we run it during the weekdays, there's different shifts and different folks working. Often families are working 2 jobs. So Saturdays tends to be a day that people have a little more available.
Thank you very much for telling us about it. I'm going to leave people with your website to check out. I've got sevenoaks.org/programs if they want to check out or if they want to volunteer. Is that the right place to go?
It can be, but if you call our office, that would be ideal.
Okay, what's the number?
204-697-5967.
Perfect.
And they'll be directly speaking to one of us, and we will definitely give you the information you need.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being with us via Zoom this morning. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
With us live this morning, that was Jana Mickey, the program director for the Seven Oaks Immigrant Services. So the program, as she mentioned, happens every Saturday, starting this weekend. By the way, their first opening sessions at 950 Jefferson Avenue. And if you want more information, you can check out sevenoaks.org/programs, or you can call the office, especially if you're interested in volunteering and have some time to help out as they need that help. 204-697-5967.
For breaking news as it happens, stay with CBC News. For the latest updates and what it means for Canadians, stay with CBC News. When the biggest stories break, both at home and around the world, stay with CBC News.
It is right now 6:22 a.m. and if you were listening to World Report, you heard the exchanges between Tim Walz last night and J.D. Vance. It is just over a month now, November 5th, until the U.S. general election, and polls continue to show a tight race between the Democrats and the Republicans. Last night, Tim Walz and J.D. Vance went head-to-head in the CBS News vice presidential debate in New York City. Both candidates were looking to sway voters in the last scheduled debate of the 2024 campaign. Niambi Carter is an associate professor of public policy at the University of Maryland and here to analyze what happened last night in case you missed it. Good morning.
Good morning.
So I did not miss this, but I admittedly got most of the way through, and then kind of near the end, they were so policy heavy. I was sort of, turning away and doing my nightly dishes and then popping back in. What was your impression of the debate last night, Niambi?
I thought it was civil. I mean, I thought it was what we used to get with our politics, quite frankly. And so it was one of those things of, oh, right, this is what politics used to look like kind of moment. And so I would say for that, it was a win, and that was kind of, all that I really got out of it, if that makes sense.
I kind of had the same impression myself, where I was watching thinking, oh, they're actually being civil, nodding to each other, having moments of where they even said they agreed with each other. Like it was very old school in some of those ways. However, it made one wonder when J.D. Vance has behaved and come across in such different ways in other settings, how tactical that was on his part. And then also on the part of Tim Walz, whether some of that was nervousness. What was your sense of the, performative aspects of the debate?
Oh, certainly. I think J.D. Vance, we have to remember, he is a Yale-trained attorney. This man understands polish and how to talk. I don't think this was Tim Walz's best format. That said, Tim Walz has done debates before, and I think once he got warmed up, it was a much better debate for him. But certainly J.D. Vance was trying to come across as, I think, more appealing, less threatening, less strident than he has in other settings and other forums. And certainly, I think, wanted to draw a contrast to his own running mate, who many say is unfit for office. I think he wanted to show that he is, in fact, fit. And if to be Donald Trump's sort of co-president, if not become the president in very short order.
What were the standout moments to you that helped define the debates? The best moment for J.D. Vance and the best moment for Tim Walz?
Well, I will start with Tim Walz because I think it was easier to say what his best moments were, quite frankly. I think there were two moments in particular on abortion, because he talked about the women who had to make these really difficult choices, and the fact that it ended in death for some, that some had to cross state lines, who, even a 12-year-old girl, right, who'd gotten pregnant by her stepfather or something really horrendous. I thought that was really effective. And when he talked about what he did as the governor, as the chief executive of his state, to remedy that and to provide protection, I thought was a really important move. I think the other, when he talked about gun rights and talked about being that his son had seen a shooting and that he had become friends with the parents of victims of school shootings, as changing his mind on guns and being, the NRA guy to being where he is now on guns. I thought for J.D. Vance, one of them was when he talked about his wife in reference to child care and how difficult those decisions are, even when you have the most resources. I thought that's where he shined. I thought that's where he looked very sincere. I mean, you saw him look like the proud husband, and that's something we hadn't quite seen from him. And then I also thought when he kind of hit at the campaign, the Harris-Walz campaign for immigration, I thought him talking about the failures of what he called the Harris administration rather than Biden was a really smart rhetorical move. And I don't think Walz had a very strong comeback. He did come back, but it just didn't land, I think, the way that J.D. Vance's criticisms of this administration did.
How much do missteps that can go, go all over memes and the things that are said that clearly are misspoken, but in this format, how much do they matter? Like Walz last night saying he sat with school shooters. Obviously, he misspoke, not misstep, but misspoke. But, that's being taken. It's going to be, put out all over the places after debate. There's always clips. But I wonder how much that will matter. And I also wonder, Nyambi, why you say it wasn't maybe his best format, Walz.
Well, I think at the beginning he started out very nervous, and I think that nervousness was clear. I mean, he seemed a little stodgy and maybe over rehearsed, but once he loosened up, he got better. J.D. Vance, I think, is a skilled debater. I don't know if that comes from his time as an attorney or not, but J.D. Vance seemed much more comfortable, at least out of the gate. And I'm sorry, what was the other part of your question?
I was wondering about the misstep where he said that.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, Walz was talking about, and part of me, I think the quote was he made friends with school shooters. That's going all over the place now. He obviously misspoke, but how much does that impact things?
I don't think that will matter much because we have to remember only a month ago people were making memes about J.D. Vance and his affinity for couches. So I don't know that this will matter much. I think most people, hopefully people use their common sense and know what he says because he followed up and said, I've talked to the parents of the victims of the Sandy Hook shooting and things like that. So I think if people use their context clues and their common sense, they can come away with that. But it doesn't matter. It's going to be part of the discourse. I don't think it will go very far, but it's still going to be out there. It's already out there. And there's no getting around that.
Did either of what was said last night in terms of what Americans needed out of this debate, does it move the needle in either direction?
I don't think so. I think it was pretty much, what people, it's standard fare at this point. But I think what will happen or what has come from this is that people who might have been on the fence because they don't like Donald Trump or weren't sure what Donald Trump might do in office can say, okay, there's an adult in the room I can trust. I'm going to be more comfortable going to the voting booth in November. Same thing for Kamala Harris. People who aren't sure about her, who don't like her very much, who find her personality lacking, said, I like Tim Walz. Governor Walz is somebody I can trust. So we will have two experienced legislators, two experienced executives in that office. I feel good about the collective experience of that ticket, and I can vote for them in November. So I think if nothing else, it maybe get people who were on the fence over the fence and off the couch.
5 weeks to go to really get off the couch. Thank you, Nyambi. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's Nyambi Carter. She's an associate professor of public policy at the University of Maryland. We reached her in Washington to talk about the vice presidential debate that happened last night. Coming up, we have business news, and Phil Demont is in once again. Christley Ramlichan's back today. I knew as soon as I said that it would switch. She's going to talk about the federal government announcing some relief for small businesses. That's after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, we've got a little bit of light rain out there. It's 13 degrees. We will see a mix of sun and clouds later today. Windy again, northwest 30 gusting to 50, and again, a little bit warmer than seasonal, a high today of 17. Drought has taken its toll on Manitoba Hydro once again. The Crown Corporation says it lost $157 million during the fiscal year that ended in March. Hydro says dry conditions in 2023 led to low water on Lake Winnipeg, and that in turn deprived its generating stations on the Nelson River from operating at full capacity. This loss, a big turnaround from the previous fiscal year when Hydro posted net income of $638 million. A former trustee in the Mountain View School Division says the current board is failing students. Lynn Smith served on the school board in the Dauphin area for 20 years. Mountain View's current trustees have been under scrutiny since April, when one trustee gave a presentation claiming residential schools started out as a good thing. Most recently, 4 trustees decided to ban all flags except for Canadian, Manitoba, and school flags. Smith hopes a by-election at the end of this month will bring the focus back to education.
I see very little conversation about education that the trustees are having for their focus. Other things have usurped, other agendas, other initiatives, I guess, have usurped, what I see anyway, have usurped the continued conversation.
Education Minister Nello Altamar says the school board is, quote, struggling a bit, but hopes they can move forward after the by-election to fill 4 vacant seats. For the first time in decades, Manitoba is conducting a review of its Mental Health Act. It comes from pressure to remove police as first responders in crisis calls. Megan Daniel at the Coalition of Families Affected by Police Violence hopes this review leads to change.
We've heard from the Winnipeg Police Service specifically that insistence that a police presence is always necessary. And I think that there are alternative responses without police. And those are important because police can exacerbate the stress of those in crisis, especially if they've had previous negative interactions.
Winnipeg police say the number of crisis calls has steadily grown over the years. A North End community activist says Winnipeg police should improve communication with people in her neighborhood before buying another police helicopter. Air One has been flying for 14 years. Police say parts to repair the helicopter are getting harder to find. They want to get a new chopper on a lease-to-own basis. Mary Burton says the police helicopter still causes trauma.
If they just posted why they're flying around these neighborhoods, that might lessen people's distrust with the police department and with the ghetto bird flying around their house. Because I know it scares me when I see it, and I see it almost daily.
Police say the helicopter only responds to specific calls. They don't know how much a new one will cost, but hope they will have it sometime in the next year. Well, Manitoba's PC opposition is calling on the NDP government to disclose its financial commitment to the redevelopment of Portage Place. True North Real Estate is spending $650 million to redevelop the downtown Winnipeg Mall. The city has approved a $40 million package of assistance. The federal government's in for up to $27 million. The province's main commitment is a 35-year lease of space in a new healthcare tower planned for the mall. Premier Wab Kinew says he won't say how much Manitoba will pay to lease that space in the tower. Interim PC leader Wayne Iwasko says he should.
Accountable, transparent are 2 words that I know that this government doesn't necessarily have in their toolkit.
The Canadian Taxpayers Federation and Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives have also called for more transparency from the province on True North lease payments. The UN Security Council has an emergency meeting scheduled today on the latest developments in the Middle East. It follows Israel's limited ground offensive into Lebanon yesterday and Iran's launch of 180 missiles towards Israel. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vows to retaliate, but Iran's officials say that would be a mistake. In the U.S., the 2 major vice presidential candidates faced off last night in a televised debate hosted by CBS. The candidates avoided personal attacks and stuck to debating their policy differences. You can hear more on these stories and other national and international news coming up on World Report at 7. For the first time, we're going to hear a painting, by renowned artist Emily Carr. is going to be headed to auction in Toronto next month after it was purchased for just $50 at a barn sale on Long Island, New York. The piece, painted in 1912, is estimated to be worth up to $200,000. The artwork depicts an Indigenous memorial post that stood in Masset, a village on BC's Haida Gwaii archipelago. Long Island-based art dealer Alan Tribitz found the painting in the Hamptons this year and knew it was something special. So it goes up for auction. We'll hear more news coming up, as I mentioned, at 7 on World Report. But also you can stay in step with the news at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Everyone's dream, right? Buying something and then finding out it's like, ooh,
Yeah,
really
you
special.
see something and you think, I wonder if there's something more to this.
Yeah, and then usually there's not. Except in this case. Thank you, Heather.
A barn sale, yeah.
All right, let's get into the weather forecast here. It's time for your regional forecast from CBC Manitoba with Abby Adiyemi.
Good morning once again. We're looking at a mix of sun and clouds with breezy conditions in many areas down south, while the upper region, the northern part of the province, will see flurries and rain showers. Winnipeg currently at 13 degrees. We're seeing a light rain outside. Expect cloudy conditions with this light showers to stay with us. Once it's gone, we see a mix of sun and clouds close to your lunch break. Breezy conditions will develop around the noon period and then will warm up to 17 degrees. Brandon at 9 and cloudy at this time. You look out for cloudy skies, a slight chance of early morning showers also in the forecast. Then that would transition to a mix of sun and clouds later in the day. Breezy conditions factored in also. You get to a high of 16. Thompson is currently at 0, increasing cloudiness with flurries in the forecast and rain showers sometime this morning. Then it gets breezy later on. The high would only get to 5 degrees for Thompson today. Further north in Churchill, it is 3 degrees and also cloudy. We're going to see light snow mixed with rain. That's the forecast for today. Then becoming windy, and the high would only get to 2 degrees. Dauphin is at 8 and cloudy. Expect these cloudy conditions to stay with you this morning. A slight chance of showers in the forecast, then a mix of sun and clouds later in the day. It will become breezy as you approach the noon period. Your highs would get to 16. Good morning to folks in Gimli. You are sitting at 11 and cloudy at this time. Today's forecast for the Interlake region indicates mostly cloudy skies, then a slim chance of morning showers. As you approach the noon period, we'll see a transition to a mix of sun and clouds. Breezy northwest winds and then high 15. Steinbach 11 heading to a high of 18. Similar conditions to Gimli, and Morris at 12 degrees at this time for the Pembina Valley region. We're going to see cloudy stats, a slim chance of showers in the forecast, followed by a mix of sun and clouds. Breezy conditions, high 17. I'll say just 13 right now in the city. A bit of rain spitting here and there out there, and then just don't worry, the clouds might clear up later in the day, and then we'll see some sunny conditions.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Let's get into the commute with Corey Funk.
A really quiet commute out there so far this morning. Haven't heard of any major issues, but if it's anything like yesterday, that can change on a dime. So if you see something going on out there, if you're walking, biking, driving, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number, 204-788-3093.
You know what one of the hazards of this job is?
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea how to commute. We talk about the commute all the time, but because we are always coming to work at different hours, like I'm never in traffic. So when I have an appointment, I'm consistently stuck in traffic or I'm late or Took me an hour and a half to get to St. B the other day. I'm like, what is this? And my husband's like, it's rush hour.
I know. I have like no tolerance for sitting in traffic now because I'm just used to just like the biking in like clear, calm conditions.
Back lanes, folks. Back lanes. That's my code.
Okay. All right.
Okay, I like
I'll
that.
keep that in mind. I might need that today when I'm heading to Garden City for something later. All right, let's get into what's happening in business news. Crystal Ramlakan's been hanging out on Zoom waiting for us to turn our attention to her. How you doing this morning?
Hello. Good morning, Marcy. I'm well.
Good.
Good to be back.
Good. Nice to have you back. So let's start with the federal government announcing some relief for small businesses. What more can you tell us about this?
Well, small businesses will receive 5 years worth of carbon rebates in December. So owners have been waiting on this for years, and the government says it will send more than $2.5 billion to about 600,000 businesses. And the payments will return a portion of the carbon price revenue from 2019 to this year in jurisdictions where the federal fuel charge applies. Now, BC and Quebec have their own separate carbon pricing systems, and therefore they will not receive the carbon federal rebates. Now, the amount received received by a business will depend on the province it operates in and the number of workers it employs. So, for example, a business in Ontario with 10 employees can expect to receive just over $4,000, and a business in Saskatchewan with about 500 employees will receive almost $577,000. The government also announced lower credit card transaction fees, which will take effect on October 19th. Now, this is supposed to save small businesses about $1 billion over 5 years. Now, the Canadian Federation of Independent Business applauds these moves, but it is calling for an end to the carbon levy. It says most small firms now oppose the carbon tax.
Let's move to the stock market now. How are markets reacting to the fact that Iran fired missiles into Israel?
Well, U.S. stocks ended the day lower yesterday, but the TSX edged up to a record high as oil rallied. So the Canadian benchmark benefited from higher oil and gold prices. Investors fear the escalation of tensions in the Middle East could lead to disruptions in the flow of oil. So crude prices have jumped amid speculation about how Israel and the U.S. may respond to Iran's move. While Israel is not a major producer of oil, Iran is, and the potential for a wider conflict could affect other neighboring producers of crude. So John Zechner is the chairman of J. Zechner Associates, and this is the advice he has for investors right now.
I would make no changes based on what happened. Nothing fundamentally has changed about the market, the outlook. I think the reality is over the, interest rates are going to be going lower. The economy's most likely, in my view, slowing down, and markets are fairly elevated. So it's not, it's hard to advocate, say, okay, now jump in on this one day of weakness. I say, wherever investors were, just, stay there. Look for, high dividend, high yield stocks. You probably want some bonds in the portfolio because rates are going down.
Now, shares of defense contractors have also rallied after what's happened. But Zechner also adds that September and October are always more volatile months.
And this half hour, I should just mention, we have an interview about what's going on in the Middle East this morning. Iran's attack was the biggest ever military blow against Israel. And there's a headline on the latest article on our website at cbc.ca that poses the big question, because how Israel responds. This is the headline. How Israel responds to Iranian missile strikes could reshape politics in the region. So we're very much on top of that. We'll talk about it this half. Before you go to market, so this morning, let's talk labor news, because dock workers on the U.S. East Coast and Gulf Coast are on strike. This actually came up in the U.S. Vice Presidential debate last night. What's the impact of that?
Yeah, well, it's their first large-scale stoppage in nearly 50 years, and it's halting the flow of about half of the country's ocean shipping. And this is because negotiations for a new contract have broken down over wages. So the strike blocks everything from food to vehicle shipments across dozens of ports from Maine all the way to Texas. And analysts warn that the disruption will cost the economy billions of dollars a day. It could threaten jobs, and it could even stoke inflation again. And this is affecting Canadians too. Canada and the U.S. have a very close trade partnership. So Anthony Formusa is the president of National Produce Marketing in Toronto. He's waiting on 5 containers of mangoes and pineapples worth $200,000. And they're stuck in a vessel waiting to dock in Philadelphia. Now, some piers in that city are open because they run on a different union, but he still just doesn't know if the cargo is going to be unloaded anytime soon. So here's what he also had to say about what the impact could be on consumers.
Major shipping lines, it seems they want to push these costs or their, these additional, whatever the repercussions are of their losses, potential losses due to the strike, onto us, their customers, which unfortunately will then be pushed off to the consumer, which is something that the consumer doesn't need right now in our current, economic state, especially with food prices.
And some experts estimate for every day the strike goes on, it will take 3 to 5 days to clear the backlog.
What's up in the markets, Crystal? In
Europe, markets are slightly higher. Germany is down, but just slightly right now. The UK and France are both up. In Asia, stocks are rallying. Japan is down. Shanghai and Hong Kong are both up. Oil is up at $2.57 to $72.40 US per barrel. Gold is down $13.50 to $2,650.50 US per ounce. And the dollar is just slightly up 0.02 of a cent to 74.2 cents US.
All right, enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. Take care.
Okay, thanks. You too, Marcy.
That's Crystalie Roundlacan joining us via Zoom each and every morning from our business desk. So how are you doing with the shift in Manitoba? The shift in temperatures, the shift to fall, a little bit cooler. Yesterday was the first day where I was like, oh, okay, do we turn the house heat on? Not quite yet, in my house at least, but we'll get there. 13 degrees in the city right now. We did have some spitting light rain this morning. We will remain with a 30% chance of showers for most of the start of the day, a high of 17 degrees. It's cloudy in Brandon, it's 9 degrees, and in Thompson, right in the button, right at level. You're at 0 right now with a clear sky. Well, one of the things that tends to happen as we shift seasons is as you start to look for things to go out to do inside. Maybe you're going to check out a concert. Maybe you got tickets tonight to the Burt. BC folk duo O.C. Elliott is in town. Here they are with their song, Come On.
Off of the road, feeling the lows, and I don't wanna know that the bad tide's coming. Can't get away, but I have to go, so I'll say it again. Make it okay, come on by and make the noise in my mind go quiet, come on by and wake me up to be kind to this time. Back in the cold, facing the life that I don't really know, getting by with the truths I hold. Take me to Spain, give me the orange plum, southern sun for a day. I need something like, come on by and make the corners of my mind not blind, come on by and wake me up to be kind with my time. In the patterns I know, they'll take me below. You can make them all go with your casual smile, being near for a while. I get re-inclined. Come on by and make the darkness I find not blind. Come on by and wake me up to be kind in this time. Da 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 da. Da 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 da.
Maybe they'll play that tonight at the Burt. BC folk duo O.C. Elliott. They are going to be playing the Bird tonight, and that tune's called Come On By. It is 10 minutes to 7 o'clock on 89.3 FM. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team here at Information Radio. Thanks for joining us on CBC. Well, next, let's return to one of the top stories today. Everyone watching what is going on in the Middle East. There is high tension over the escalating situation there. Now, Israel is assessing its response after Iran fired ballistic missiles targeting the entire country. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu this morning saying that Iran will pay, quote unquote, for launching missiles at Israeli cities. But we do not yet know what is going to happen with any type of retaliation. Now, world leaders are calling for restraint from all parties to avoid a spiral into a bigger conflict and an all-out war. Rex Brynan is here to talk about it, specialist on Middle East at McGill University. Good morning.
Good morning.
So for those that are not yet plugged into today, what are the latest developments overnight?
So yesterday, of course, we had Iran launch 180 ballistic missiles, apparently at 3 Israeli air bases and a couple of intelligence targets. A higher proportion of those warheads got through than in a previous Iranian attack back in April, although there don't appear to have been any deaths in Israel. Not from that. There was a terror attack at the same time. We're really waiting to see what the Israeli next move is, and I suspect that it will be much more substantial than the retaliation was in April. While that is occurring, of course, the war in Lebanon is continuing, and the Iranian action was retaliation for the assassination of Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah in Lebanon. Israel is conducting limited ground operations in southern Lebanon, as well as airstrikes, and of course the war in Gaza is continuing. So what we're looking for now is what Israel's next move is vis-a-vis Iran.
We're just losing the tail end of your voice there, Rex. I'm not sure why, so I just want to mention that just in case there's an issue with how the mic might be in front of you there. Can you tell us what Washington has said now about the U.S. course of action at this point in time?
Well, Washington supported Israel's self-defense. It indeed shot down some of the incoming Iranian ballistic missiles. It's urging caution at this point, but then Washington's urgings to Israel have not been terribly effective through much of the conflict that began on October 7th. On the Israeli side, I think that there may be this time around some desire to almost see this as an opportunity for a much larger strike against Iran.
I mean, people are waking up this morning reading this as Iran's attack is the biggest ever military blow against Israel. They may be hearing you say that whatever Israel is going to decide to do, we can extrapolate just from some of the language and some of the way this is all escalated in the Middle East, that it may be more severe than what they did previously earlier this year. How consequential is all of this? What are you watching for in the coming hours?
Well, I think it's consequential because it accelerates the rate of escalation, particularly in terms of direct Israeli-Iranian conflict. As I said, this Iranian attack appears to have been targeted against military targets. That's not where all the warheads land, but that appears to have been targeting. Last time Israel retaliated by striking a military site. This time they may move on to attacking nuclear infrastructure, attacking the oil industry, places where Iran is more vulnerable, particularly the latter. If they do that, the Iranians will feel that they then have to respond against Israeli critical infrastructure, ports, power generation, and so forth. So that war to get much more intense, I think it contributes to the war in Lebanon becoming even more intense as well. So we're in a very dangerous situation. As you say, world leaders have called for de-escalation. The UN Secretary General has done so, but after the UN Secretary General called for de-escalation, he was then banned from visiting Israel because Israel didn't particularly want to hear that from him. So we're at a point where I think the Israelis are likely to want to escalate rather than de-escalate with regard to Iran. And that's on top of the war in Gaza, on top of the war in Lebanon right now.
I was just going to say, I mean, it's hard to really fathom that we're framing it in that way. But I mean, that's on top of the war in Gaza, on top of the war in Lebanon. On those fronts, what is the latest and what's going on there?
So Gaza continues to be, a scene of terrific humanitarian suffering. Dozens of Palestinians killed there every single day. More than 41,000 killed since the war in Gaza started, and no sign whatsoever of a ceasefire deal or a deal and a deal that would see the release of Israeli hostages. So things are simply continuing in Gaza as they've been. In Lebanon, things are escalating, with Israel having now launched ground operations, so having invaded the country on the ground, in addition to airstrikes. I expect that will continue. Much of the population of South Lebanon has now fled to elsewhere in the country. Much of the population of southern Beirut has fled as well. So, those wars continue. In the case of Gaza, at devastating costs, it's escalating in Lebanon. And on top of that, we have this direct confrontation between Iran and Israel.
Rex, thank you very much for the analysis. Appreciate your time today.
You're welcome.
That's Rex Bryan, Professor of Political Science at McGill University. So World Report's coming up in 4 minutes from now. We're going to hear more about the world response to what is developing in the Middle East. And then locally speaking, in the next hour of Information Radio, for some Manitobans, Iran's missile attack on Israel hits very close to home. Still to come, we're going to talk to a member of our local Jewish community who fears the attack on Israel could lead to an increase in anti-Semitism here in Manitoba. So we're going to talk more about those connections. And by the way, of course, Monday is the 1 year since the attack, October 7th attack. We have some special programming planned for throughout the week because Monday's the anniversary of 1 year of the attack. But then, of course, days later, full-scale war. And then Israel's response in Gaza, which you heard has been humanitarian devastation there. So we're going to hear more from a number of different communities in Manitoba about how your lives are impacted here because of what has been escalating and going on in the Middle East now for a full year. It is 3 minutes to 7 o'clock. Heather Wells joins us with headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, childish and mean behavior is how a dad in Dauphin describes board meetings in the Mountain View School Division. Chris Lark says it's disheartening to see a board of trustees focused on non-issues like banning some flags at schools instead of students having a healthy learning environment. We'll hear the latest from Mountain View School Division coming up. And summer's over. That means it's back to the legislature for MLAs. The NDP government is going to focus part of its effort on getting its omnibus budget bill passed into law. It'll also be the first time New Democrats, since the first sitting since New Democrats kicked Mark Warsilliou out of their caucus. So we'll hear those stories coming up in our next local news at 7:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, just before I look at weather and traffic, I want to mention a few things coming up in the next hour. So in addition to having that conversation about the Middle East and how the conflict there impacts people here, we also are going to be looking at a couple of other things. One of them has to do with the weather. We've had obviously a warm fall so far, certainly a very warm September. That might be impacting your seasonal allergies in a new way this year. So we're going to hear more about that. We have an allergist on locally here in the next hour. Plus, we can't resist but cover this on the show today because did you see the video yesterday coming out of Conception Bay, Newfoundland? They had a marathon there and a local goat joined the runners. So they gave it a medal. We're going to hear that quirky little story coming out at us in the next hour of the show. Weather-wise, today, 13 degrees in Winnipeg. Right now, it's cloudy. We do have that chance of showers staying with us this morning. Just a 30% chance. It's spitting on us a little earlier. Looks like right now, people don't have wipers on. So in the moment, we don't have rain. Today, a high of 17, though. That should calm by noon. And then this afternoon, really windy. Winds northwest 30 to 50 once again in Winnipeg. Brandon's cloudy and 9, Thompson's clear and 0. If you need us on the morning commute, you can give us a call on 788-3093. That's the traffic line. You can reach Corey and let him know what's going on your Wednesday morning drive. Stay with us. World Report's coming up next. It's 1 minute to 7.
Today on The Current.
There is a chance the way you're making sense of things today will not be the way you make sense of it tomorrow.
A quarter century ago, Malcolm Gladwell started thinking about tipping points, that moment that a trend tips into something much larger. Now he's back on the topic, but looking at the darker side of social contagion and what he got wrong 25 years ago.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Iran's supreme leader is speaking publicly for the first time since his country launched 180 ballistic missiles at Israel.
اینا اگر شرشون را از این منطقه کم بکنن
Ayatollah Ali Khamenei did not mention the missile attack, but his speech was incendiary. He said if Israel removed their evil from this region, wars would disappear completely. Israel is vowing to respond to Iran's attack, which left craters in parts of Tel Aviv. And this morning, its war with Hezbollah is intensifying. The CBC's Sasha Petrusik is in Jerusalem with the latest.
The shattered glass and battered houses in a suburb of Tel Aviv, a reminder of the missiles and interceptors that lit up the sky and shook the ground last night, shrapnel falling, killing one man in the occupied West Bank. There's political fallout too, as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vows to strike back hard.
מי שתוקף אותנו, אנחנו תוקפים אותו.
Whoever attacks us, we attack them, he says. Speculation here that Israel may target Iran's oil facilities. Tehran says its response will be just as powerful. But Israel's military also has other battles to fight. Troops starting a ground assault on Lebanon may be running into resistance, as Hezbollah says it's pushed back commandos from a village in the southeast near the border. Israel sending more armored and infantry battalions north to go after Hezbollah tunnels and bases, says spokesman Peter Lerner.
More forces have gone in because of the extent of the infrastructure that is across the border.
Possibly signaling that Israel's challenge in Lebanon may be greater than anticipated. Sasha Petrusik, CBC News, Jerusalem.
It was all about policy during last night's U.S. vice presidential debate. Democratic Governor Tim Walz and Republican J.D. Vance faced off on the economy, abortion, and conflict in the Middle East. The one and only vice presidential debate was seen as the candidates' last big chance to try to connect with voters. As the CBC's Chris Reyes reports, it was also an opportunity to reinforce the platforms of their presidential running mates.
From CBS News headquarters in New York, America Decides, the vice presidential debate.
Shaking hands in the beginning and the end, the one and only debate between Ohio Senator J.D. Vance and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz was mostly calm and collected, except for one moment when producers shut the mics off to keep Vance from going over time when attacking Kamala Harris's immigration policies.
It's something that Kamala Harris created, Margaret.
Gentlemen, the audience can't hear you because your mics are cut.
But beyond that, the two candidates remained civil, avoiding personal attacks and sticking to debating their policy differences on the economy, reproductive rights, gun laws. The first question of the debate was on the escalating tensions in the Middle East. Both candidates defended their running mates on leadership in the region.
But what's fundamental here is that steady leadership is going to matter. It's clear, and the world saw it on that debate stage a few weeks ago. A nearly 80-year-old Donald Trump talking about crowd sizes is not what we need in this moment.
As much as Governor Walz just accused Donald Trump of being an agent of chaos, Donald Trump actually delivered stability in the world, and he did it by establishing effective deterrence. People were afraid of stepping out of line.
The debate is a one and only showdown between Vance and Walz. With less than 5 weeks left to the vote, there are no other scheduled debates between any of the candidates. Chris Reyes, CBC News, New York.
Russian forces have taken over Volodar. Ukrainian forces have been defending the eastern city since Russia's full-scale invasion began more than 2 years ago. Ukraine's military command confirms its soldiers have been told to pull back to avoid being surrounded. Control of the city is seen as a significant victory for Russia. Its troops are pushing further into Ukraine. We get more from freelance reporter Dominic Velitis.
Russia has been trying to take Volodar in eastern Ukraine since 2022, spending thousands of lives in the process. And today, it looks like it may have finally pulled it off. Earlier, Ukrainian troops were ordered to withdraw from the town to avoid being completely encircled by Russian troops. Moscow has long viewed taking control of Volodar as an important stepping stone to incorporating the entire Donetsk region into Russia. It is a strategically important place. Situated on high ground and at the intersection of Ukraine's eastern and southern battlefield fronts means it's important for both sides when it comes to supplying their soldiers on the ground. It also sits close to a railway line linking Crimea, which Russia annexed in 2014, to Ukraine's Donbass region, made up of Donetsk and Luhansk, most of which Moscow now controls. Analysts say taking Volodar, which Moscow has long portrayed as a Ukrainian stronghold, opens the way for Russian forces to advance on other places as they try to pierce even deeper behind Ukrainian defensive lines. Dominic Velitis for CBC News in Riga, Latvia.
People in Amjinong First Nation are worried about the long-term effects of life on the edge of a petrochemical complex. The chemical plant in southern Ontario has a leaky storage tank, and this week people in the First Nation were told to leave their homes. There were concerns about spiking emissions of a known cancer-causing chemical. The CBC's Chris Ensing reports.
Jason Plain watches his 3-year-old grandson play outside.
We got a really good community, but yeah. There's been some sicknesses.
Plain grew up in Amjinong, a First Nation of about 1,000 people tucked in an area known as Chemical Valley, bordering Sarnia, Ontario. He wonders if the products produced there are making people sick. Environmental scientist Miriam Diamond says he's right to be concerned.
There is unfortunately considerable data showing that this community is a cancer cluster.
One of the companies operating there has become the focus of tightened government restrictions. Styrolution, a petrochemical company on the edge of Amjinong, has been ordered to fix a leaky benzene storage tank. Multiple people were hospitalized after being exposed to the fumes last spring. The Band Council asked people to evacuate their homes this week because they're worried about a potential spike in emissions while that work is completed. About 100 people decided to leave. In a statement to CBC News, the company says the plan has been approved by Ontario and federal regulators. Plain points out the signs warning people to stay out of creeks that he swam in as a kid and wonders what damage has been done before the government stepped in.
They never told us not to swim in little creeks along our reserve here.
The work underway may be a short-term fix. Longer term, the company says it plans to shut down the plant sometime in the next 24 months. Chris Ensing, CBC News, Sarnia, Ontario.
Imagine being put on a surgery wait list only to be told months later that your wait is getting longer. It is happening to an Ottawa woman who has a high risk of developing breast cancer. The 32-year-old's preventative surgery wait was already 1 to 2 years. Now she's being told to expect that wait to grow. As Matthew Kupfer reports, these delays are not uncommon.
When Ashley Ricks first learned she had a greater than 25% risk of getting breast cancer, her thoughts turned to her family.
I keep thinking of my husband having to raise 2 disabled kids by themselves.
Ricks has fibrocystic breasts, which cause chronic pain and lumps. She's worried cancer wouldn't be caught in time and wants a preventative double mastectomy. Her doctor put her on a wait list, but after 6 months, she checked with the Ottawa hospital and was told to expect to wait even longer, at least another 2 years.
It seems since after COVID, the healthcare system has crumbled, like it's getting worse.
Dr. Muna Al-Kaifi from Sunnybrook Health Centre says pandemic delays still linger and risk-reducing surgeries are considered elective.
The wait time for these surgeries is too long because we don't have enough resources. The priorities is almost for patients who do have active disease.
Ellen Winters is a breast cancer survivor and advocate who says delays are affecting all types of patients. She welcomes Ontario's plan to open up mammograms to women in their 40s, but is concerned that will lead to longer lines for the same operating rooms.
The system is what the system is, and so I actually think that we'll see those wait times actually increase, unfortunately.
The Ottawa Hospital says surgery wait time estimates fluctuate. It says operating room priority is given to life-threatening and time-sensitive procedures like active cancer, and it's working to increase capacity. Matthew Kupfer, CBC News, Ottawa.
Matthew has more on this story at cbcnews.ca. It's on our main page. That is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime, cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio live in downtown Winnipeg. You're on CBC. It's cloudy, right around 13 degrees right now. Welcome to Wednesday. You might be listening on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or on YouTube this morning, wherever you are. Thank you for joining us. Well, you've just heard World Report, and before that, we had a full interview about the escalation of violence in the Middle East. This morning on the program in the next hour, Iran's missile attack on Israel hits close to home for one person we're going to talk to, a member of our local Jewish community who says she fears the attack on Israel could lead to an increase in anti-Semitism here in Manitoba. So we're going to find out more about why she says that, so stay tuned. In addition, this hour on the program, an allergist is going to join us to talk about why your seasonal allergies might actually be a little worse than usual this fall and how you might find some relief. And then we're going to hear a sports story about the GOAT. And not the GOAT how we usually talk about a GOAT in sports, the greatest of all time, a literal GOAT who got involved in the marathon in one Canadian city. So stay tuned for that. Right now, let's go to Heather Wells at 11 minutes past 7 o'clock. She's here with our headlines.
Good morning. Well, drought has taken a toll yet again on Manitoba Hydro. The Crown Corporation says it lost $157 million during the fiscal year ending in March. Hydro says dry conditions in 2023 led to low water on Lake Winnipeg, and that, in turn, deprived its generating stations on the Nelson River from operating at full capacity. Calls for more transparency after Premier Wab Kinew refuses to say how much the Manitoba government has agreed to pay to lease space in a new medical tower planned for Portage Place. The Premier says disclosing that precise amount could affect leases with other landlords. We'll hear some reaction in our next local news at 7:30.
All right, thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Abby, we've had a little shift here downtown with the weather. It's getting wet.
Yeah, it's spitting outside. Light rain showers we're seeing in the downtown. Down south, we started with cloudy conditions. Most of the regions will be seeing light rain. Then we'll see some sunshine later, and a breezy condition would come with that. Up north, though, the menu for them is flurries and light snow mixed with light rain also. More like a weather mashup for folks up north. Right now in Winnipeg, we're seeing that light rain outside, still sitting at 13 degrees. We kicked off the day with some cloudy conditions, but now we see some sprinkles outside that we felt here and there in the city. Now, those light showers will hang around this morning. However, as we get later into the day, we'll enjoy a lovely mix of sunny conditions and some cloudy conditions also. Expect breezy winds blowing in from the northwest around noon, and we're aiming for a high of 17, which is a bit warmer than our usual 14. We're supposed to be at 14 at this time of the season. Up north, it's more like a winter wonderland is trying to make its appearance for Thompson and Churchill. We're seeing flurries and snow mixed with rain, and then down south, slight chance of showers throughout the day. Then a transition to a mix of sun and clouds. We're seeing temperatures hover between 9 and 11 down south, and we're going to be warming up close to 18 degrees for most of the regions down south.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Sounds just sleety up north, so just starting to get messy that time of year, right? Corey, I laughed out loud just now. Because Abby's doing your weather. Corey was drumming. Do you ever do this? I do this with your pen. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden it went flying. It was like across the studio. It was like a Mr. Bean moment.
And it's not the first time or the last time it'll happen either.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
You'll have to be careful because Corey and I also sit beside each other in the newsroom. So
yeah.
You're saying I should be ready to dodge your,
at any time.
Your pen drumsticks?
Yes, exactly.
Later today. What's going on in the commute?
Really only one call I got so far. Actually, since the weekend, the street lights, not the traffic lights, but the street lights on Main Street from Higgins to about Portage have been out right now. So during the dark hours, like right now, it's actually a little bit not great visibility on Main Street both ways in that kind of section. So look out for that. We got a call from someone. Thanks for that. If you do see something else going on out there, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number to call, 204-788-3093.
Well, fall can often be a tough time for folks that struggle with seasonal allergies, but this year the warm weather that we've had combined with high winds could be making things even worse. Let's remember Saturday where it was nearly 30 degrees with those warm winds as mentioned. So what do you do if you feel overwhelmed with allergy symptoms, and what has to happen for those irritants to end? Dr. Christina Kalazinski is with us, who works in a clinical immunology and allergy clinics at the Health Sciences Center, and she's up early via Zoom with us today. Good morning.
Good morning.
So I mentioned a little bit about the strange weather we've been having, especially in September. The whole month was extremely warm. How does that change the landscape of allergy symptoms for people that struggle in the fall?
Well, in the fall time, the major allergen that peaks is mold. The first peak is early spring, when people call it snow mold, and in the fall it's a second peak. So I guess the bigger question is how long this warmth is going to last, because once we have some snow cover, then that mold season is over. So a prolonged fall without without snow, beneficial for many people. Others would want that snow cover so that they're less symptomatic. And yes, you mentioned the winds. So of course the winds, stir up everything, including like the mold, but also a lot of dust, the particle dust, which we call irritants. So that can compound symptoms in those people that have mold allergy, but also can cause symptoms in those that don't have allergy.
Is there a way to compare season to season? Like, just is fall a worse season in terms of allergens in Manitoba versus spring, or are they about equal?
It really depends on the person. Again, in spring, early spring, we've got a peak in mold, and then we follow that by the tree pollen season. So you sort of have two things going on at the same time, plus, again, lots of dust and everything from the street cleanups. So it depends if a person is both mold allergic and tree pollen allergic. And whereas in the fall, the mold is the predominant and some of the dust. Duration of season, patients have said some prefer a sort of a long, slow season. Others prefer to just get it over with an intense but short season. So it really varies, as do things like the humidity. Of course, if it's very dry, a lot more things are going to be blowing around.
What are you hearing from, we talked about the reasons that the fall might be tough this year, but what are you specifically hearing from patients right now in terms of severity of their allergy symptoms in Manitoba?
Well, I think one of the other things that compounds it is it's September, and so children are back to school, and things are getting passed around. So the children then also bring it home, and the adults also get sick. So that also compounds things. So if there's more viruses out there, that will also make symptoms worse, both for people that have nasal allergies, so-called allergic rhinitis or hay fever, but also from asthmatics. Overall, at least with our clinic, the sort of the spike in phone calls of our patients having difficulty really were more based on the smoke in the air from the forest fires, and either them calling or just in their scheduled follow-ups. That's when they've had to increase their medications. Usually in the fall, it's mostly those the viruses that are tipping things off and needing changes or adjustments to their medications for that.
What are some less common symptoms that people might mistake for a cold or another illness that may in fact be allergy?
Well, it is very difficult to tell the difference, and that's why people sort of know their own bodies and know their own symptoms for their allergies, because both can cause, of course, nasal congestion and sneezing and runny nose. Allergies are more likely to cause itchy, watery eyes, whereas colds more just like watery eyes and light intolerance. If you have a sore throat and just sort of feel more unwell, then that might be a cold. It's again even more difficult if you're mold allergic currently and you've got a cold on top. If it's not behaving like your typical allergy symptoms, and if it's not improving with your usual medications, and it's not getting better, and that's when you need to seek medical attention.
Thank you very much for your medical attention to the issue this morning. We appreciate having you with us via Zoom.
Thank you very much, and have a good day.
You as well. That's Dr. Christina Kalazinski, who works in clinical immunology and allergy clinics at the Health Sciences Center. Time right now is 7:20 on CBC.
He kept cars quiet.
We fix your muffler expertly.
He got saucy about chicken.
There's always value in a visit.
And he was concerned about curves.
You wanna be sure about the way you look and the way that people look at you.
How Jerry Goodis made an advertisement a beautiful thing on Under the Influence with Terry O'Reilly, Thursday morning at 11:30, 3:30 p.m. in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
Well, the baseball playoffs are underway. We're going to talk about that when we cover sports in a couple minutes here on Information Radio. As mentioned, it is 7:20 and light rain falling in downtown Winnipeg. Well, we have a tune this morning from Sasha. The latest song is all about living life to the fullest, and she calls this a sunny day anthem. So it'll be perfect for today because we're not actually going to see a lot of sun. So we'll have to live vicariously through this tune. This is Sasha and High Life.
Whatever floats your boat, whatever gets you off, whatever flips your switch, whatever turns you on and on from dusk until the dawn. You can roll it up in paper, crack it in a can. As for me, it's just my nature to be buzzing as I am. I ain't drinking, I ain't smoking, now the only thing I'm toking is them big white fluffy clouds in the sky. I'm living the high life. Topo Chico in love, got me feeling alright. No, there ain't nothing missing, baby, I'm just out here living the high life. I get that sunshine here, I feel it in my soul. And when I wanna get lit, I hit that road and roll till I lose control. I don't need a Friday night, don't need a closing time. It's 24/7, and I'm alright, alright, alright. I ain't drinking, I ain't smoking, now the only thing I'm toking is them big white fluffy clouds in the sky. I'm living the high life. Topo Chico in love, got me feeling alright. No, there ain't nothing missing, baby, I'm just out here living the high on life. Yeah, I'm high, baby, you do you and I'll do I ain't drinking, I ain't smoking, now the only thing I'm toking is them big white fluffy clouds in the sky. I'm living the high life. Topo Chico in love, got me feeling alright. No, there ain't nothing missing, baby, I'm just out here living the high life.
7:23 a.m. is the time right now. Sasha out of Workworth, Ontario. Tune's called High Life, and Sasha's going to be performing November 26th, scheduled to play here in Winnipeg for a show at the Park Theatre. It is 7:24 a.m. right now on 89.3 FM, 990 a.m. on the app or YouTube. We've got, as I mentioned, just some light rain falling out there in Winnipeg. It's 12 degrees as the sun gets ready to come up. It's going to be pretty cloudy today, actually, though, in a high of 17 degrees. Winds will be northwest 30 to 50. Brandon's cloudy 9. Thompson's mainly clear this morning and 0. And we have, I think Thompson was a cold spot. It still is. Yeah, cold spot in Manitoba, 0 right now. Victoria Beach, by the way, is the warm spot right now, 13 degrees on your Wednesday morning. Thanks for being with us. I want to mention what's coming up a little bit later today. If you're a regular listener to CBC Locally, then you know that Radio Noon has a call-in every day between 12:30 and 1 o'clock. And today's call-in topic is money. Despite inflation and interest rates easing a little bit, there's a new report out, yet again, that tracks how everyone's doing. And it says that nearly 60% of Canadians are stressed, spending nearly half of their income on housing. So how are you feeling about the financial strain, managing your budget? If you want to call in around budgets and how you're finding how you're finding things right now in your own family. You can connect with host Chloe Friesen. She's guest hosting this afternoon on Radio Noon. So the call-in's between 12:30 and 1. And we like to mention it on the morning show because if you're up early and maybe the time of day that you have most open to call is right now, you can call and weigh in on the topic, financial strain and stress, at 788-3797. 788-3797. That's the Radio Noon call-in line. And Chloe will be conducting the conversation live between 12:30 and 1. Right now, it's time to talk morning sports. Scott Regehr joins us as he does each and every morning with sports from CBC. Hello to you.
Happy hump day.
Happy hump day. And happy baseball playoffs underway now. What stood out for you on opening day?
Well, that the chances of a non-traditional World Series winner winning this year's Fall Classic seem higher than usual, Marcy. Yesterday's winners included San Diego, which has never won at all, Kansas City, which hasn't made the playoffs in 9 years, and the Mets, who, despite having the highest payroll in the game, still needed a Cinderella run at the end of the regular season just to get here. But there is one club, Marcy, whose performance yesterday transcends all those I just mentioned.
And the Tigers hold on, and all of Motown can exhale. Oh, what a game!
Led by their Triple Crown-winning pitcher, the Tigers have their teeth back. Tariq Skubal threw 6 scoreless innings in a win yesterday over Houston. During the regular season, Skubal led the game in strikeouts, in wins, and earned run average. And yesterday, he helped Detroit win its first playoff game in more than a decade. So, like the city itself, Motown's sports franchises are experiencing a renaissance of sorts. Coupled with the NFL Lions, it's a good time to be a big Cat fan in Detroit. And as everyone knows, the MGM Lion is from, well, it's not from Detroit, but it worked for the script.
You're on fire with the sound effects. I like it.
He's from, that's Leo the Lion, the MGM Lion. He's from the Dublin Zoo in Ireland.
What's Scott going to bring us next when we start talking about basketball?
Whoever knows. Not even me.
WNBA playoffs nearing their end right now. It's looking like there could be a new champion, eh?
Yeah, the two-time defending champs Las Vegas, Marcy, are on the ropes in New York. Liberty star Sabrina Ionescu scored 24 points last night in a narrow victory over the Aces, which means New York needs just one more win to knock off the champs and make the finals themselves. Here is Liberty coach Sandy Brindello.
It's still very calm, even when it was getting a little stressful there, because I just trust that we can play poised in those moments and make appropriate plays. Sabrina was massive down the stretch there, and I was excited to see Alicia Keys, so that excited me. But, I mean, we haven't done anything yet, and we've done what we're supposed to do. We've protected home court. Now we want to go to Vegas. That's all our focus now, and we'll just get locked in.
You heard Brindello mention Alicia Keys. The 16-time Grammy Award winner was in the front row at Barclays Center and then visited New York's players in their locker room after the game was done. I wonder if Keys might sing the national anthem then, should the Liberty make it to the finals. That would be, she's done the Super Bowl, right? So there's precedent here. New York can get into the finals with a win in Vegas on Friday night.
I love Alicia Keys.
Me too. With you.
All right, let's finish with curling, where the sport's embarking on a new era.
It is the first Grand Slam of the season. The Tour Challenge is going on right now in Charlottetown, PEI. This is the first event under new ownership. The so-called Curling Group purchased the Grand Slam from Rogers earlier this year. The founder and CEO of the group, Nick Solsky, promises big changes.
The things we are going to introduce into this sport are going to be from the perspective of an outsider. I would argue that traditionalism has stunted the growth of curling. So will there be certain things that we introduce that might annoy old school traditional curling fan? Yeah, maybe, but you gotta ruffle some feathers.
I love that. One change is the format of the event. It's now a triple knockout as opposed to the traditional pool play. So 3 wins and you're in the playoffs, 3 losses and you're out. Pretty simple. It's a format that seems to agree with at least 2 of the 5 Manitoba skips involved in this Grand Slam tournament. Matt Dunstone and Caitlin Laws both won their opening matches yesterday.
It's always a talker when you change any sport, though. I always think it depends on what you're doing. Like, I played volleyball for my whole life, still do. And so, you only used to be able to score when you had the ball. They changed actually how the scoring worked up to 25. Didn't used to be up to 25. But then I think about golf when they were like cutting the holes bigger, like that. That to me is like fine for if you want to get people interested in golf, but that's not, that should never change. I don't think at the professional level, but it's always a talker. People are always going to weigh in when you change anything.
Bigger baseball bases, right?
That's
another
right.
example.
Yeah. All right, Scott, we'll see what happens with the curling changes. Thank you.
You bet.
Coming up, we're going to still talk about sports because we're going to hear more about the goat that ran a marathon in Newfoundland. We can't resist. We have a bright story on a cloudy Manitoba morning coming up. Stay with us. That's right after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, we've had a little bit of light rain. It's 12 degrees right now. We will see a mix of sun and clouds. It's going to be windy still, northwest 30 gusting to 50, and our high today is 17. A father of two in the Mountain View School Division is sounding the alarm about his daughter's education. Chris Lark in Dauphin says it's disheartening to see the Board of Trustees focused on non-issues like banning some flags at the schools instead of students having a healthy learning environment. The board of the Mountain View School Division has been mired in controversy for months after a trustee called residential schools a good thing. The province appointed a committee to help the board. Lark says the board isn't doing enough to help students, staff, or the community.
Exhibiting very childish and mean behavior. My thoughts now have changed from let's help these people learn to let's get rid of the board. I really do feel at this point now, through the actions that were shown on Monday, we need to dissolve the board as it is right now and start fresh.
Manitoba's education minister says the government won't dissolve the Board of Trustees. Instead, he hopes a by-election to fill 4 vacant seats at the end of the month will help. An inspector with the Winnipeg Police says changes to the Mental Health Act could be better for both officers and the people who need help. The province is looking at reforming the act, which could mean a different approach to people in crisis. Right now, only police can execute mental health orders, which can trigger some. Inspector Helen Peters is the health liaison for Winnipeg Police, and she welcomes any changes.
That multi-layered approach. One size does not fit everything. One response does not meet the need. And instead of looking to remove responses, what we will hope for is that addition of different types of responses to meet different needs.
Winnipeg Police dealt with more than 230 mental health orders between May and August. Peters says reforming the act could free up officers to deal with crime and allow people who are trained for mental health calls to help those in need. Police say they need a new helicopter. They say Air One has been flying for 14 years and it's getting hard to find parts for repairs. Winnipeg Police are looking for a new helicopter deal on a lease-to-own basis. Superintendent Brian Milne doesn't know what that will cost. He says the chopper is a valuable tool for policing. Milne says it cannot be replaced by drones.
Very different tool sets. So I think the best way to sum that up is if you have a screwdriver and you go out to buy a hammer, you don't throw away the screwdriver. It serves very different missions.
Milne says a helicopter can travel across the city in minutes. A drone can only be used in a confined space where it can be seen by the operator on the ground. Police hope to have a new helicopter sometime next year. Well, drought has taken its toll again on Manitoba Hydro. The Crown Corporation says it lost $157 million during the fiscal year ending in March. Hydro says dry conditions in 2023 led to low water on Lake Winnipeg, and that in turn deprived its generating stations on the Nelson River from operating at full capacity. To the Middle East, and Iran says its missile attack on Israel is over, barring further provocation. Yesterday, Iran launched more than 180 ballistic missiles at Israel. Israel and the U.S. are promising to retaliate, sparking fears of an even wider war in the region. You can hear the latest on what's happening in the Middle East, as well as other national and international news coming up on World Report at 8. Premier Wabkanu says he won't disclose how much the Manitoba government's agreed to pay agreed to lease a space in a new medical tower planned for Portage Place. True North Real Estate is spending 2/3 of $1 billion redeveloping the downtown Winnipeg Mall. The province is helping out with a 35-year lease. True North pegs to be in the tens of millions of dollars a year. The Premier says disclosing the precise amount could affect leases with other landlords. Gage Halbrick at the Canadian Taxpayers Federation says the province should be more accountable.
When we look at the grants and tax relief coming from the city, it's clearly laid out in the agreement what the city is giving money for and what they expect in return from the development. So we come to the province, we have to say, why aren't you telling us the whole story? Taxpayers deserve to know.
The Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives and the provincial PC opposition also are criticizing the government for its lack of disclosure. Well, summer is over, and that means it's back to the legislature for MLAs. The NDP government will focus part of its effort on getting its omnibus budget bill passed into law. The bill, which enacts many of the changes in the spring budget, has come under fire from the opposition PCs. The government inserted non-budget items into the bill, including a measure to forbid employers from using replacement workers during labor disputes. The fall sitting is also the first since the New Democrats kicked Mark Wasilyu out of their caucus because a colleague of his is a defense lawyer for disgraced fashion mogul Peter Nygard. Wasilyu accused Premier Wab Kinew of being a dysfunctional bully and now will sit as an independent. You can see more news, stay in step with everything that happens in your news day on our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
It is kind of gloomy outside, Abby. Like it's almost, just like gray and rainy.
I know. We got that light showers outside and I see wipers going. And of course, the temperature dropped by 1 again. So we're at 12 degrees.
Yeah, sleepy Wednesday morning.
Yeah, it's just a sleepy one. Light rain in the city. We're expecting these cloudy conditions to stay with us for most of the day. We'll still have this slight chance of showers here and there. Then we see a transition to a mix of sun and clouds as we get closer to the afternoon period. We get a high of 17 today. Brandon, 9 and cloudy. Anticipate cloudy skies. A slight chance of early morning showers also in the forecast for that region, transitioning to a mix of sun and clouds later in the day. Breezy conditions will come with that, then leads to a high of 16. Thompson, clear at 0 at this time. We'll see some clouds roll in, flurries and rain and snow in the forecast. It's going to be kind of breezy. Later in the day, you get to a high of 5. Churchill, 3 and cloudy. Also, you're expecting light snow mixed with rain today, becoming windy throughout the day. And you see a high of just 2 degrees. Dauphin, 8 degrees and clear and cloudy at this time. It's more like an overcast in that part of the province. We're expecting this condition to stay with you for most of the day. There's a slight chance of showers in the forecast, about 40% of that. Then we'll see a mix of sun and clouds later in the day. Breezy conditions will develop after the noon period. You're going to warm up to 16 degrees. Gimli, similar condition at 10. You're heading to a high of 15 today. A slight chance of showers in the forecast. Also, the same for Steinberg, Morris, we're going to be seeing temperatures around 11 degrees at this time. Cloudy conditions. We're looking at sunny skies later and then a slim chance of showers in the forecast. For both regions, we're looking at highs of 18.
Abby, you know how on TV they have the Daily Lift, right, on the CBC News every night?
Yes.
Locally? This is our next story in a moment is a bit of a daily lift. Corey, I know you don't have much traffic, so...
Yeah, no.
But I was surprised by this story because I don't know about you guys, but I didn't really think goats ran.
They do.
You know this because you grew up with some goats, right?
I grew up on a farm with goats,
Yeah,
and my case is I remember getting off the school bus, and this goat embarrasses me because he runs to me.
Oh, isn't that cute?
You got a goat.
That's nice.
Why are you embarrassed?
Because he runs up to me and then he's headbutting me.
Oh.
That's like, no. Like, yeah, a kid is just coming back from school and he's all excited and then, you know how they like hop around and he's hopping all around me.
Yeah.
And he's like trying to give me the nut. Like, no. Dogs are going to,
How old were you?
I was about 7 then.
Oh, I like this image. I like this
so
image.
So you can imagine
of Abby
a 7-year-old with
goat.
less stamina and a goat coming to knock me off.
Corey Funk, goats in your life?
Yeah, I once was staying at a monastery in Syria in exchange for milking goats. And that was the whole deal. And they can run. You have to chase them down and kind of pull them and then milk them.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, this is all. I've obviously not been around goats, but I love goats. I'm like obsessed with goat videos online. But this is all leading us into what is kind of our version of a daily lift. So we thought we'd chat through traffic. If you do need us, by the way, 788-3093. But yesterday there was this video going around from something that happened in Canada. It was a marathon in Conception Bay South, or CBS, Newfoundland. And they have, as they're now calling it, a new goat. Greatest of all time, but this is actually a real goat. Joshua, the goat, broke free of his tether near Taylor's Pumpkin Patch in that part of Canada in CBS, and he took to the trail with other racers doing this marathon. Once he got into the swing of it, apparently there was no stopping him, which obviously you can hear surprised me. I didn't know goats could run that far. Not only did he finish, they gave the goat a medal. Heidi Taylor of Taylor's Pumpkin Patch in Conception Bay is Joshua's owner.
He's 11 years old. He came to the farm at just a few months old. He's a real people goat. Like, he loves people. We've had several goats on the farm. He's the biggest at about 150 pounds, but the most gentle with the public, especially with little children. So at this time of year, with the weather being so nice, he's tethered outside. He has a pen and a house, but he likes to be out. Because there's so many people in the area coming by to see him. And he decided when he seen, a crowd of runners, that he was going with them. We walk him, and he's walked off leash a lot because he's a goat that if you run, he runs. If you walk, he walks. If you stop, he stops. He knows his name, but he will follow you. And the more excited you are, like running, he runs. He's excited. So I guess when he's seen them all going, he's just going along for the run. We were home here yesterday morning, as typical Sunday morning, and just on social media, and someone posted a picture of this goat crossing over the 4 lanes down by what they would call the Kitty Yates Turn in CBS, which is close to the Sobeys and Long Pond. But he was crossing over to go to the other trail because you have to cross the main road to continue on with the T railway bit. I put a Facebook post up saying, please keep me updated where you see him, because we're driving in a car. He's on the trail, and you can't get there by a motorized vehicle. So someone, through talking to the police and the traffic cop and our own patrol up here, they knew where he was. So they told us we went and got him. The police and the racers and the coordinators wanted him brought to the finish line. So we then took him to Topsail Beach, where he did the last bit of the walk in, to the beach and across the finish line on his own then. There were people out in their pajamas out on the road because news travels fast. There's a goat running down the road, and no one could believe it because he was in the race. He just wasn't wandering off. He was running with them. I thank the racers because they really kept an eye to him. I know there's water stations on the way for the racers to get a drink. They were trying to give him a drink. He wouldn't drink. He just kept going. Some of the racers were telling me that they slowed down because he was getting tired. So, of course, they're still running a marathon. They want to keep going. They speed up. He sped up. Janine Scott was the one who did the medals, and she thought it was only fitting that he also received a medal. It was such a heartwarming morning that, everybody wanted him to be part of it then, and it was great. And since then, we've gotten a call from the coaches for the CBS Renegades. The hockey game is Saturday night, and they want Joshua to come with somebody to drop the puck on center ice.
You're welcome. And I'm totally stealing our television news kicker name, The Daily Lift. And we're calling that our Daily Lift this morning. Who doesn't love that story? If you're watching on YouTube, you got a special treat as well, because Kevin put together a nice pack where you could see the goat running. Heidi Taylor's goat, Joshua, just competed in the Conception Bay South Half Marathon. And yes, as you heard, on Saturday night, he is going to be dropping a puck at a hockey game.
Your neighborhood, your community, your country, your world, your news that matters, news that belongs to you. Your World Tonight, every night, 7 days a week on CBC Radio 1. On demand on the CBC Listen app and everywhere you get your podcasts.
7:44 a.m. is the time right now on CBC. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thanks for joining us on this rainy Wednesday morning. Still ahead after 8.
You know, as someone who loves mountains and hates cold weather, if you had told me 10 years ago that I was going to move to Winnipeg, I probably would have thought that you were high.
But he did move to Winnipeg. A travel YouTuber whose video about moving here to our city has received big reaction. We'll hear why he chose to put down roots on the prairies. That's coming up after 8 on the show. Right now, a little bit of music from Vancouver's Ivan Hartle, who spent a good part of the last few months out on the road. He says he's just not quite ready to give up the summer vibes. And so you might hear those in his latest tune. This is So Am I on 89.3.
Complicate this, I know. Always in a constant state of yes and no. Maybe I'm living all my life in vain. Ooh, but now you got me feeling some kind of way. Just you laughing after all is everything that I could want. Just you laughing so dear. You said you flying high, felt so am I. So am I. You're some quick rush aside. Comes to thee, but so easily outright with you next to me. And I'll never get enough of what you do. Oh, I can never get enough of you. Oh, just your loving after is everything that I could want. Just your love is so dear. It sets you flying high, but so am I. So am I. Well, 'cause when I'm on the precipice, feeling the weight of the world. Nothing but your precious love, and all my tides they turn. Just your laughing, and after all, is everything I could want. Just your love is so divine. You said you're flying high, felt so am I. So am I. So am I. Got me feeling like whoa. I said, oh,
Ivan Hartle and So Am I on CBC. I'm Marcy Marcusa. You're listening on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app, or maybe watching on YouTube on a rainy Wednesday morning. It's 12 degrees in Winnipeg. Our high today is going to be 17. Chances these showers are going to continue with us this morning. Then they should die off for a cloudy afternoon. Windy again, though. Winds will be northwest 30, gusting to 50. 11 minutes now to 8 o'clock. And as you may have heard in the news yesterday, minimum wage has just gone up, of course, the beginning of the month, October 1st, technically the first day. And so we're going to hear after 8 o'clock what the impact is. Jim Agapito from CBC visited some students next door at the University of, went to the University of Manitoba, so not at U of W, but at U of M, and talked to some students about their thoughts on the minimum wage increase. Of course, it's still not as high as some other provinces, but it is a change. It has gone up by 50 cents. So we'll hear more about reaction to that coming up after 8 o'clock. Well, speaking of reaction, a lot of people are awaiting and watching what is going on and developing in the Middle East. And here at home, tensions continue to rise as well as people are awaiting what's going to happen next as Israel considers its response and Iran its next move. Yesterday, air raid sirens filled the air as Iran fired missiles into Israel. It warns that yesterday's attack was only the first wave of what is to come. This came a week after Israel launched a ground invasion into southern Lebanon. Now Israel is vowing to strike back. So there's developments this morning where Iran is now saying they have no further plans, but that depends on Israel's response. The Benjamin Netanyahu saying that their people will pay. That was his quote for what happened with these strikes. Iran's attack marked the biggest ever military blow against Israel. Now, this morning, one of the headlines on CBC.ca reads how Israel responds to missile Iranian strikes could reshape the politics of the region. So we're certainly living in tense and historic moments here. My next guest is a University of Manitoba student, Emma Zentner, and she's one of the people anxiously watching the Middle East. She's a member of the Jewish community here. She has ties into the larger diaspora. She says for her and many others, yesterday's attack hits very close to home, and we're going to talk about that this morning. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you reaching out.
So what were your initial thoughts when you learned of Iran's attack on Israel and how this escalated in this way?
For sure. Well, to be honest with you, the number one thought is always just scary. It's scary for our family and our friends that are living in Israel or just abroad in Israel during this time. I would like to say that it was an entire surprise. I think that we know better by now with Iran's use of proxies and the terrorist organizations in the Middle East that are funded by Iran. We knew an attack was coming of some sort. I think the magnitude and the scope of this one was what was unexpected. But initial reaction is just what's going to happen next? What does this mean for the ongoing war? What does this mean for our family and the 10 million people that were sent into bomb shelters all around the country last night?
In your own family, and so much as you're open to sharing, are people in a specific region that you're concerned about overall, or?
To be honest with you, for the past couple of months and since the beginning of the war on October 7th, we've seen attacks hit certain parts of the country, either whether it be in the south, in the north, closer to the Gaza envelope or the West Bank. Yesterday, we saw from coast to coast, from top to bottom, sirens going off in every single city. So for anyone who has any connection to Israel, chances are they know someone who was sent off into a shelter at some point yesterday. So that's definitely concerning that this is a full-scale attack on all of Israel.
Monday's the anniversary of October 7th. What's the last year been like for you, and where have you found in Manitoba, where have you found support to cope with things as they've been transpiring?
Yeah, so it's hard to imagine. It's hard to believe that it's been 1 year already since October 7th. For Jewish people in the diaspora and both in Israel, I think it feels like it was just yesterday, but also the longest year of our lives. Since October 7th, we've just been waiting and watching the news and doing what we can from a distance as a Manitoban and a Jewish person living in the diaspora. It's been a lot of feeling helpless, feeling like our hands are tied, and there isn't much that we can do to improve the situation. We can pray and we can hope for the best and we can think of our loved ones, but that's been very challenging for the past year because we know that ultimately the decision isn't in our hands and stopping the war is not something that I'm going to be able to do sitting here. In Manitoba specifically, I'd like to say that I'm very fortunate and our community is very fortunate. I hate to say that we have it easy in comparison to other countries because any level of anti-Semitism is not okay and shouldn't be tolerated, but we definitely have been seeing a lot of room for allyship and community building over the past year. What I can tell you that Jewish people all around the world are feeling is a lot more connected to their sense of Jewish identity and Jewish community. It's easier in times of crisis to surround yourself with people that feel the same way that you do and that are also identifying with this struggle. But then going to work and going to university and leaving the little bubble is frightening at times. It's met with anti-Semitism, it's met with anti-Israel comments, it's met with a lot of being scared and being nervous of what people are going to say to you. So it's definitely been a challenging year for us.
So obviously, B'nai B'rith Canada, I shouldn't say obviously, but we've reported B'nai B'rith Canada and had them on the program, have talked about a rise in anti-Semitism in recent years. You're nodding to since October 7th last year, the conflict in the Middle East, adding to that. Is it affected you personally?
For sure. I, by nature of being here, I think you can tell I'm very outspoken about my Jewish background, and I'm very involved in learning and understanding the politics of Israel and the history of Israel and what's going on in the region. But a lot of my peers aren't, and a lot of our Jewish community members aren't. And I often say that we were not raised Jewish to be activists. We weren't raised Jewish to have to defend it all the time. That's not the best part about being Jewish. It certainly is not my favorite part. But unfortunately, we've kind of had to take on this role of being activists or advocates for Israel, for the Jewish people throughout the past year. For me, I spent a lot of time at the University of Manitoba. I spent a lot of time just in the broader Manitoba community. The anti-Semitism that I have faced is not your atypical flags waving in your face, screaming violence, so to say. It's a lot of these one-off comments that I call like psychological terror, to be honest with you. We recently had a conversation with some university students about what it's like to be a Jewish student on campus in Manitoba, and a lot of them were saying that it comes with a lot of anxiety and taking a big toll on students' mental health because they don't know when the next comment is going to come. They don't know what peer who is sitting next to them in class is going to say to them after hours. They don't know what's going to happen on social media, and it's kind of just this waiting and guessing game to see who's going to say something and who's not going to say something. For me, I've been met with a lot of comments in relation to being a genocide supporter or being a racist because I'm Jewish or because I'm a Zionist, or these comments that I think students and people in general aren't entirely sure of their meaning, but has definitely felt the repercussions of anti-Semitism myself, and I have had friends and peers in the city who've experienced much worse than I have. Even children who are in middle schools and high schools across the city have been getting remarks from classmates as young as 7 years old. So the sense of feeling unsafe and feeling like anti-Semitism is coming from all angles is definitely felt.
Where do we go from here as Manitobans, do you think? Because sitting in class before October 7th would have been a different experience. Sitting beside, we live in a diverse population. I mean, there's diversity of points of view within the Jewish community, within the Israeli community, within the Palestinian community. There's differences all over the place in Manitoba. That's where we live. Where do we move? What do you think is going to help us to move forward and reconnect as Manitobans so everyone feels safe, including people like yourself and others you were describing who face these comments that are making you feel, I think your description was, you didn't use the word unsteady, but you were talking about that, what it feels like.
Yeah, for sure. I really appreciate that comment because something that we often talk about as Jewish people is that we are not homogeneous. We are not just one people. We have diversity within our own community. And as a child of immigrants myself, I understand and I love the beauty of Manitoba in the sense that we are made up of every person under the sun, so to say. I think for us, we've been seeing a lot in the past couple of years that in conversations about ethnic relations, about diversity, about multiculturalism, about DEI in school systems or in work systems, that the Jewish people are often not part of that agenda or not included. We're labeled as another and somehow always slip through the cracks of those important conversations. I think for Manitobans, as much as we talk about how important our diverse community is, it's really about finding allyship and finding the humanity in one another. We're all Canadian, we're all Manitoban, we all contribute to the society just as much as one another. And I think being able to see that in other cultures and other ethnicities that are different than yours is what's most important here.
Well said. Thank you very much for sharing, Emma, especially on this day where things are very much developing. We're about to go to national news. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much.
Emma Zentner, member of Manitoba's Jewish community. For local headlines, cbc.ca/Manitoba. You're on CBC this morning. And World Report is coming up next. We're going to have the latest analysis of what's developing in the Middle East. There have been developments overnight. You're on 89.3 FM. Light rain in Winnipeg, 12 degrees, and your commute's moving fine. 788-3093 if you need us.
On cue.
It's comedic how hard it's been for me to find anything.
If you watch the show The Bear, you'll know Liza Colon-Zayas. She plays a middle-aged line cook named Tina who is challenged by her mentors to learn new skills as a chef. She'll tell you how her character has inspired her to learn new skills and to reinvent herself.
Q with Tom Power this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland and on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Rockets are flying over the border between Israel and Lebanon. Hezbollah is firing at Israel. The Israeli military is firing at Hezbollah, and it is sending more troops into southern Lebanon to join its ground offensive. As that war escalates, the world is waiting to see how Israel will respond to Iran and the ballistic missiles it fired overnight. The CBC's Crystal Gomansing is tracking developments in London.
Video on social media shows craters in Tel Aviv, not far from the Mossad headquarters. The aftermath of the Iranian assault.
Will be a severe retaliation coming from Israel.
Zibi Hadavelli is Israel's ambassador to the UK. She says the strike should not be dismissed because no Israelis were killed.
The intentions matter, and the intentions of the Iranian regime was to target Israeli civilians.
An estimated 181 ballistic missiles were fired at Israel Tuesday night. Nearly all were intercepted. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Iran made a big mistake by attacking Israel and is vowing to strike back. Iran's chief of staff warned against that. Mohammad Bagheri says if Israel makes another move against Iran's sovereignty and territorial integrity, last night's strikes will be repeated with more intensity and Israel's infrastructure will be targeted. Sanem Vakil is a Middle East expert with Chatham House.
Iran does not have the conventional military weapons to stand up or to fight against Israel. So the axis of resistance, Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, were Iran's deterrent capabilities.
With Hezbollah engaged with Israel in Lebanon, the Houthi group made a statement. It says the United States and the United Kingdom's continued support of Israel is putting their interests under fire. Crystal Gomansing, CBC News, London.
There were more Israeli airstrikes in Gaza overnight. Medics in the Palestinian territory say at least 50 people were killed. Some were in a school sheltering displaced families in Gaza City. Others were in areas near Khan Yunis raided by Israeli tanks. The IDF also mounted an overnight operation in Hebron in the West Bank. The Palestinian news agency Wafa reports 5 people were detained. It says 3 Palestinian medics were severely beaten by Israeli security forces. Israeli officials told the Times of Israel the soldiers were there to demolish the homes of suspects from yesterday's shooting and knife attack in Tel Aviv. Police say 7 people were killed in that incident. Global Affairs Canada is working to get Canadians out of Lebanon. 200 citizens were flown out yesterday, and there are 3 more flights scheduled for later this week. But as Julia Wong reports, some families say it's not easy to get their loved ones home.
We have been trying to get her out for almost 2 weeks now.
It has been agony for Samir Blabel to get his niece Nadine out of Lebanon, where she had been visiting her fiancé. After several attempts, she flew to Dubai Monday, but it's not clear when she can fly back to Edmonton.
It's one thing at a time.
As the violence between Israel and Hezbollah escalates, Blabel feels helpless. Chairperson of an Edmonton Lebanese organization, he has other family members who are not Canadian citizens who are displaced within Lebanon.
We hope this nightmare will stop.
Spokesperson for the United Nations Secretary General Stefan Dujarric.
The Secretary General expressed his extreme concern with the escalation of the conflict in Lebanon. He appeals for an immediate ceasefire.
The Canadian government is pleading with citizens to get out while they still can, saying seats on flights have been reserved, and pointing to Iran's missile strikes on Israel. Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly.
There is also a war going on in Lebanon. We are in a scenario where there is a war in the Middle East. And so that's why I just said this is a very dangerous time in the Middle East.
As for Blabel, worries over a larger regional conflict have been heightened.
My feeling is that this should stop. That's all what I can say.
As he hopes and waits for news about his loved ones. Julia Wong, CBC News, Edmonton.
A California doctor charged in the death of Matthew Perry will appear in front of a judge today. Dr. Mark Chavez is expected to formally plead guilty to one count of conspiracy to distribute ketamine. He allegedly conspired with another doctor to supply Perry with the drug. Prosecutors say the accused took advantage of Perry's addiction issues. Perry died last October. The autopsy report shows acute effects of ketamine as contributing to his death. The U.S. vice presidential debate was policy-focused in New York last night. Democratic Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and Republican Senator J.D. Vance debated immigration, abortion, and what happened in the 2020 election. The CBC's Richard Madden was watching, and he joins me now from Washington. And Richard, walk us through the debate.
Yeah, well, it was surprisingly civil, very Midwestern nice, but Governor Walz seemed nervous at the start, while Senator Vance came across much smoother. Now, the two mostly avoided attacking each other, focusing more on the top of the ticket, on issues ranging from the Middle East, abortion, immigration, and economic records. Now, Walz admitted he misspoke about visiting China during the Tiananmen Square massacre back in the 80s, and his cringy misstep about gun violence went viral. Listen.
Yeah, I sat in that office with those Sandy Hook parents. I've become friends with school shooters. I've seen it.
And Walz also missed many opportunities to challenge Vance, but there was one key moment when he brought up Trump's attempt to overturn the 2020 election.
He is still saying he didn't lose the election. I would just ask that. Did he lose the 2020 election?
Tim, I'm focused on the future. Did Kamala Harris censor Americans from speaking their mind in the wake of the 2020 COVID situation?
That is a damning non-answer.
It's a damning non-answer for you to not talk about censorship.
Now, it's worth noting Vance admitted his party needs to do better attracting female voters, which may explain why he avoided being an aggressive attack dog that he's known for in Republican circles.
So how could this all impact the race?
Yeah, it's unclear how much this will move the needle. There was no knockout punch, but Senator Vance was clearly more prepared. He's used to sparring with reporters and debating, while Governor Walz has been bubble-wrapped by the Harris campaign and has mostly kept a low profile. But if anything, Vance's performance has elevated his stock within his party as a potential heir apparent to Trump in 2028.
All right. Thank you, Richard.
Thanks.
The CBC's Richard Madden in Washington. Now to an investigation CBC News has been working on for a year and a half. A Canadian activist and a group of MPs have been working together, trying to secure the freedom and safety of a group of female politicians from Afghanistan. Our chief correspondent, Adrian Arsenault, gained access to their secret mission.
Hugs at the arrivals terminal in Toronto and flowers and Canadian flags handed to a family from Afghanistan. And who should be in the welcome party but 5 MPs? 2 Liberals, a Conservative, a member of the Bloc Québécois and the Green Party. The only one missing is a member of the NDP who wanted to be there but couldn't make it. These are people who've been secretly working together for nearly 2 years, all in the name of helping Afghan women, themselves politicians, escape the clutches of the Taliban. Conservative Alex Ruff served 2 tours in Afghanistan and knows this mission matters.
So forget about the partisan baloney. This is about what's doing the right thing
to help these former Afghan MPs.
There were 69 female Afghan MPs until the Taliban took back control in 2021. Honored women suddenly hunted. Most escaped through Pakistan to other countries, but nearly a dozen remained trapped in Afghanistan. The Canadian politicians felt compelled to try to save women Canada had supported. It's taken frustrating years of securing visas and permissions and a terrible turn: the murder in Kabul of one of the Afghan MPs, Mursal Nabizada, while they all waited. This is Alexis Brunel-Duceppe of The Block.
We were in shock when we lost that woman. We all talked together. We were in shock. That's when we decided to go public.
The only reason you're hearing these voices now is there's good news. That family at the airport are the slain MP's mother and 3 little brothers, safe now.
So after school, he wants to go to university and also make her parents proud, the same that Mursal did.
And more Afghan female MPs are now here, rebuilding lives. In a world of acute political divisions, there remains real togetherness. Adrienne Arsenault, CBC News, Toronto.
That is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime at cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. How y'all doing this morning? Pretty gloomy out there, a little bit of rain, some cloud cover. You are listening to CBC's Information Radio on 89.3. This half hour on the show, minimum wage went up. We're going to talk to some students this half hour. We'll hear from them on what they have to say on whether or not it's enough, those who are making minimum wage in jobs in this province, so stay tuned. Also this half hour on the program, we're going to have a fun interview with Carl Watson. You might watch him. He's a travel YouTuber and a documentarian, but he is now living in Winnipeg. And he made this video about why and how he could have lived anywhere in the world, especially since through his work he travels all over. So stay tuned. We'll have a conversation with him. Right away, we'll have morning headlines with Heather Wells. Stay with us. Heather, what is making news today?
Well, an inspector with the Winnipeg Police Service says changes to the Mental Health Act could be better for both officers and people in need of help. The province is looking at reforming the Act, which could mean a different approach to people in crisis. Inspector Helen Peters says reforming the Act could free up officers to deal with crime and allow people trained for mental health calls to help those in need. And it is back to the legislature today for MLAs. The fall sitting begins today with the NDP government focusing part of its efforts on getting its omnibus budget bill passed into law. This is also the first sitting since the New Democrats kicked Mark Wasilyu out of their caucus. He will now sit as an independent. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 8:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
With a quick look at our wet weather, here's Abby.
We're looking at a mix of cloudy skies, sunshine down south, a mix of flurries, light snow and rain up north. Currently, Winnipeg, 11 degrees. We started dry, now we're seeing light rain, and once the sprinkle leaves us, we should be seeing a mix of sun and clouds, and we're heading to a high of 17.
Sweater weather.
Sweater weather.
All right, Corey, how's the commute?
Very quiet commute out there so far. Haven't heard of any major issues. But if you do see something going on, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number 204-788-3093.
Well, as I mentioned, if you are making minimum wage in this province, you just got a raise. In Manitoba, as of yesterday, October 1st, minimum wage is $15.80 an hour. That's up 50 cents. But is the increase enough? CBC's Jim Agapito went to ask students at the University of Manitoba for their thoughts, many of them who work on minimum wage at different jobs. The first person we're going to hear here is Meg Moda.
With the rising costs of everyday groceries, inflation taking account into that, and just everyone wanting to spend money after COVID, I feel like this is not enough for the Manitoba population, especially if you are trying to survive or thrive with the minimum wage job. This is not enough to get you even past the month.
Do you work a job for minimum wage right now?
I actually do work a job for minimum wage. I work at Canada Life as a concession worker. The good thing about that is I get tip payout, but if it was just trying to survive on that minimum wage payment, it would not be possible.
Tatiana Dela Cruz. I don't know. It's not really. It was supposed to be minimum wage, but with the hours that I built up, your wage goes up with the amount of hours, I guess. So right now I'm at $15.71, which is like supposed to be over minimum wage, but now that minimum wage is up, it's kind of like more than what I'm making, which I'm just going to basically restart, but it's going to be less.
And what do you do?
I'm a server at a retirement home. I don't really feel like it's going to make a difference to me because I was already making less than that. 50 cents. Is that a lot?
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you now. Hi, what's your full name?
Abanov Segal. I think it's fire. I think the increase means a lot to the society. I don't have a job right now, but I think this minimum wage will affect society.
Lana Jenny. I think it's a good amount. I mean, as someone who has a minimum wage job, I'm happy about it, obviously, since things are also getting more expensive.
Can I ask what you do?
I'm a server.
What are some of the daily decisions you have to make living on minimum wage?
I definitely need to budget more with food and groceries and recreational stuff, just buying clothes and stuff. It's not regularly. I kind of have to balance stuff out, but yeah.
Every expense counts. Whether that's a $5, whether that's 25 cents here, 25 cents there, everything adds up. And at the end of the day, some big ticket prices like gas, insurance, whether that's going out for dinner with friends, even celebrating something, you have to really, really take a moment and think about it. Is this worth it? Does this fit into my financial goals? Because if you're thinking short term, this money's going to run out. In today's economy, especially being students, I feel like we're already putting ourselves into an uncharted territory. And along with that, coupled with this financial uncertainty, it adds another set of stressors. So I feel like the government definitely should be doing something to actually help our students, because I feel like students are the next generation. Yes, we're going to be adding to the workforce, and we have the incentives once we get our degree, once we get our education. But until then, what's going to happen to us?
Well, I feel like right now, since I feel like prices are really bad, I can't really get what I want. It's more I have to be smart with instead of with what I need. So I feel like I'm saving up a lot, and it's just, I don't know, it just doesn't work.
50 cents not doing anything, we're still broke. Minimum wage doesn't matter. You should try to get a better job than the minimum wage ones.
Do you worry then sometimes about money?
I most definitely can say with 100% that I do worry about money, as money is the thing that keeps the world afloat, and if it's just surviving off a minimum wage job, that's not possible.
Not having enough money, especially for school. It's hard to save while also getting what you need. It's a struggle.
So what do you do then to save? I'm curious.
Often I'll put 3/4 of my paycheck in my savings and just really not spend money. I'll try my best to do it a lot less, yeah. It's usually good. It's kind of stressful. Sometimes I have to take out of my savings, but yeah.
The Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives says in Manitoba, the living wage should be $19.21. When you hear that, what comes to mind?
I would love to see a future where minimum wage would be $19, as I feel that would serve not just me, but that would serve the entire populace that is working minimum wage jobs. Not only does this add to the incentives of working hard, but it shows that people will actually stay in these jobs longer, and they won't try and use these as a ladder opportunity. So I think workforce will actually be maintained, and unemployment actually will go down because people will see that incentive to going back to work.
Well, yeah, because honestly, can you really live off of $15.80 an hour? You can't do much with $15.80 an hour. So I feel like 19 would actually make it feel like you're living a life that you can enjoy.
Yeah, I think $19.21 is a good minimum wage, because I think $15.80, I don't think that's enough.
You can't live off of $15.80.
Yeah.
You can't.
I think $19.21 is a much better minimum wage than 15. But then the prices would go up too if that was the minimum. Yeah.
I feel like since the wage is going up and inflation is going up, are we even winning at all?
It's a good question. It's actually a question they're going to be looking at on Radio Noon today. Are you feeling the financial strain? How are you managing your budget? If you want to weigh in the live call-ins between 12:30 and 1 on Radio Noon today, and Chloe Friesen is guest hosting, you can leave a message now. It's 788-3797. What you heard there was CBC's Jim Agapito speaking to students over at the University of Manitoba, specifically about the increase in minimum wage. So yesterday, it went up 50 cents to $15.80 an hour. It is 8:18 right now, and it's 11 degrees in Winnipeg with that light rain falling. I'm Marcy Marcusa, and you're on CBC. Well, next, here's a question a lot of us think about. Where would you live if you could live anywhere in the world? Where would you choose? That question was on the mind of travel documentarian Carl Watson recently, and his answer might surprise you. Have a listen.
As someone who gets to travel the world for a living, one of the questions I get asked the most is, if I could move to anywhere in the world, where would it be? So I grew up in the beautiful city of Durham in the northeast of England, but I've spent the last 17 years living in and around London, which, as a travel filmmaker, was a perfect base for exploring the world. But I have always thought about where else in the world would I like to live? Like, could it be Australia? Or better still, I could move to New Zealand, which is one of my favorite countries in the world. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. But after all these years of experiencing all these incredible places all over the world and spending a lot of time thinking about where I'd like to move to, I finally figured it out and I found the right place for me. So I'm gonna pack up all my bags, leave London and the UK, and the place I'm gonna move to is Winnipeg. Wait, what?
Yep, that's right. After literally traveling all over the globe, Carl Watson is moving to Winnipeg. In fact, he's made the move, lives here now. He outlines the reasons why in a video on his YouTube channel, Carl Watson Travel Documentaries. It's now this video racked up over 120,000 views. Carl is in Taiwan right now, but we've reached him via Zoom. Hi.
How you doing?
I'm doing well. I loved your video. I watched all of it early this morning before the show. It was super fun.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it was a lot of fun to put together.
What was the reaction you got to it when you sort of unfolded this and then you talk about moving to Winnipeg and, what kind of reaction has it got so far?
It's been interesting. There's been lots of lovely sort of heartfelt messages from fellow Winnipeggers welcoming me to the city, which has been fantastic. There's been other Canadians who have emigrated over like myself who've reached out saying it reminded them of their experience and how lovely it was. And then there's been a whole ton of other comments from other Canadians thinking I've made the greatest mistake of my life. So
you're funny in this video. You at one point say what do you actually say? What are you, high on something? Why would you move to Winnipeg? Why did you move here?
It's quite simple. My wife, Jamie's from Winnipeg. She's born and raised here. And we were doing long distance relationship for a while. And then, it made more sense. She's a lawyer, so if she moved to the UK, she'd have to retrain, whilst with what I do, I can do my job anywhere, and it would be a bit much asking Jamie to sort of move thousands of miles away from her friends and family, retrain for a job, and then while she's doing that, I'll be like, right, I'll be back in 2 weeks, I'm just going to go film a travel film. So it made way more sense for me to move here, and also just having visited Winnipeg, coming to see Jamie here a few times, kind of fell in love with the place, and I could just, the more I got to know it, I could just see our lives just sort of stretching out in front of us here. So that's why I made the move.
You cover all of the all the jokes that we know about Winnipeg, those of us that are born and raised here. Like you talk about the Winterpeg aspect, the winter, all the things that are realities here, but the things that the question even of why you say you've fallen in love with the place. What types of things have you fallen in love with? Because it made me feel so good watching this. It was like this love letter to the city that I maybe take for granted. But what have you fallen in love with?
The main thing, the big draw for me is the community, just sense of community, and not just Jamie's family and friends have been so welcoming, and they made this place feel like a home for me before I even knew it was going to be a home. But everyone else I've encountered in the city, whether it just be in a bar or out shopping, everyone's just been fantastic. And, I've lived in London for 17 years and you don't get that sense of community there because it's such a big place and all your friends are spread out. So you can build a good life here as well. The quality of life that you can afford. You can sort of have a good life and still afford to travel. So there's been lots of different aspects, and I love the cultural scene here. I'm a musician myself, and seeing some of the live bands here are just fantastic. Shout out to Dr. Octopus, who a band I love in town. And so it's just been lots of little things, put them together, and it's this could be a really fun life living here. despite the weather in the winter. So,
Well, what's your life like otherwise in terms of what you actually, do to populate your channel? Like a full-time traveling YouTuber. How many years have you been doing this?
I've been full time with it just like the last few months, but it's been something I've been like working on for like over 10 years. And I've worked professionally as a video editor for 17 years. And then I started filming my travels just as something more fun and creative to work on than the stuff I was doing professionally. And, but then I started a channel and started posting these documentaries on there. Not expecting many people to watch it, just sort of a way of sharing it to friends and family and people we met on the trip. But it just started taking off and snowballing. So it gradually went from like a side hobby to a side hustle to like 50% of my income. And now it's the full thing.
What are you looking forward to the most as a Winnipegger in the next few months, and as you continue to live in our community? And I guess people might be wondering, are we going to be featured on the channel all the time now?
They'll be featured not all the time, but there's going to be lots more stuff.
Time to time?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the videos. There's a couple of things I'm going to be working on in terms of Winnipeg content. During this winter, anytime I'm doing something interesting, like going to one of the winter festivals or going ice fishing, trying that for the first time, or just going to a Jets game, I'm going to sort of film all those bits and then make a video at the end of the season, like I survived my first winter in Winnipeg kind of thing. And then a bigger project I'm going to be doing this time next year is I'm going to be doing a coast-to-coast Canada trip, mostly on rail, just doing the whole thing on the train, and be traveling with a couple of friends from UK and Ireland. And so part of that will be showing them my new hometown and showing them around Winnipeg, which I'm really excited for.
I was hearing you talking about that rail trip. It sounds incredible.
Yeah. It'd be a great way to sort of, this is, my new country, it's my new home. So it'd be a great way to sort of, I've traveled around bits of Canada before, but never done like the full coast to coast. And so it's going to be just exciting, get to know this place a lot more.
How are you going to manage doing all this? I mean, you're coming from London, so I mean, I'm just comparing airports here. So now you're flying all over the world out of the Winnipeg Richardson Airport, which is a very different place when you think of the context of hubs for world travel.
Yeah, I mean, I have to fly a bit further. It's not a lie, but then some places are closer. It's like Jamie and I are going to do our honeymoon in New Zealand around Christmas, and if I was flying from the UK, it's about 30 hours of flying. Whilst from here, it's like, well, the flight from Vancouver is only 13. So it's like some places are further away, some places are closer, but the great thing about Winnipeg Airport, it's only like a 10, 15-minute drive from the center of town, and from getting out your car to the other side of security, it's like 5 minutes. I mean, as someone who's been to a lot of airports all over the world, like, trust me, I love Winnipeg Airport. It's a good place. In terms of an airport, it's a great one to have as your home base.
Are you taking recommendations, Carl? Because, I mean, obviously, our show listenership is all across Manitoba. So would you want people to let you know, hey, Carl, come here, experience this?
100%, yeah, because I'm just getting to know it. So I don't necessarily know what all the great things are to experience. So if anyone has any recommendations of things in Winnipeg or Manitoba to check out and feature, that'd be super helpful. I mean, an obvious one we want to do further down the line is go up to Churchill and see all the polar bears and things like that. But that's a well-known one. I'm sure there's lots of other things that I don't even know about yet, which would actually be fantastic. So if people have ideas, then please get in touch. It makes my life easier, so I don't have to do the research. So if people get in touch, it's fantastic.
Love having you on. Love the video. And thank you very much for being with us this morning. We'll collect recommendations and we'll forward them to you as we get them.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much.
Yeah, nice to meet you. All the best.
Yeah. Great to chat to you. Thank you so much.
You as well. And welcome to Winnipeg.
Thank you.
Carl Watson, travel documentarian who posts his adventures on YouTube. So he just moved from London, England to Winnipeg. You can watch the full video about the move on his YouTube channel, Carl Watson Travel Documentaries, Carl with a K. It's called I Moved from London, UK to Winnipeg, Canada. And if you've got recommendations for something Carl should do or see in Winnipeg, call our listener line, as I mentioned. So we'll throw out our morning show listener line. You can reach us at 788-3205.
He kept cars quiet.
We fix your muffler expertly.
He got saucy about chicken.
There's always value in a visit.
And he was concerned about curves.
You want to be sure about the way you look and the way that people look at you.
how Jerry Goodis made an advertisement a beautiful thing on Under the Influence with Terry O'Reilly, Thursday morning at 11:30, 3:30 p.m. in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
I'm Rob Norman.
I'm Andrew Norton.
And on Personal Best, we help you tackle the stuff you'd be too embarrassed to ask an attractive, successful life coach about.
We have a slightly different approach to self-improvement.
Which is, we don't know what we're doing.
Definitely somebody following me. She's holding a sword. This is so nuts.
But in the end, it always works. Okay, it sometimes works.
You have no idea. This makes me...
Personal Best, Season 3. Available now wherever you get your podcasts.
Coming up to news time at 8:30, I'm Marcy Marcuso. You're listening to Information Radio on this October 2nd, Wednesday morning. Hump day and really gray out there in Winnipeg. We've had light rain on and off this morning in the city of Winnipeg, and it's going to kind of continue for us till this afternoon. We are supposed to see a mix of sun and cloud. Not yet with the sun for sure, but a high of 17 degrees is what we're expecting. If you want to reach us still, we're late in the drive. We've had a really good commute this morning, though. Not a lot to report. You can call us at 788-3093. Coming up on The Current, right after our program at 8:37 with Matt Galloway, on the heels of Iran's attack on Israel yesterday, The Current today is looking at the motivations behind all of the players in the Middle East, with the region moving closer every day to an all-out war. So Matt Galloway is going to have that conversation on The Current, and that follows your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg, in a wet Winnipeg. We've had some light rain this morning. It's 11 degrees right now. That wind is going to pick up again, northwest 30, gusting to 50 by about noon today with a high of 17, and we do expect to see some sun this afternoon. A former trustee in the Mountain View School Division says the current board is failing students. Lynn Smith served on the school board in Dauphin for 20 years. Mountain View's current trustees have been under scrutiny since April. That's when one trustee gave a presentation claiming residential schools started out as a good thing. More recently, 4 trustees decided to ban all flags except for Canadian, Manitoba, and school flags. Smith hopes a by-election at the end of this month will bring the focus back to education.
I see very little conversation about education that the trustees are having for their focus. Other things have usurped, other agendas, other initiatives, I guess, have usurped, what I see anyway, have usurped the continued conversation.
Education Minister Nello Altamare says the school board is, quote, struggling a little bit, but he hopes they can move forward after the by-election to fill 4 vacant seats. Drought has taken its toll on Manitoba Hydro yet again. The Crown Corporation says it lost $157 million during the fiscal year ending in March. Hydro says dry conditions in 2023 led to low water on Lake Winnipeg, and that in turn deprived its generating stations on the Nelson River from operating at full capacity. Any changes to Manitoba's Mental Health Act are being welcomed by one Winnipeg police inspector. The province is consulting a number of groups about different approaches to responding to people experiencing mental health crisis. Under the current act, police are the only ones who are able to detain and transport people. Health liaison for Winnipeg Police Inspector Helen Peters says they need more options.
There are different triggers, many different triggers for many different individuals, and it changes from one individual to the next. But again, we can never predict the future, so we always want to take a safe approach, but understand that using different approaches may also get us better outcomes.
Peters says between May and August, police received more than 230 mental health calls. She says if more agencies are able to respond to those calls, police could be freed up to investigate crime. A North End community activist says Winnipeg police should improve communication with people in her neighborhood before buying another police helicopter. Air One has been flying for 14 years. Police say parts to repair the helicopter are getting harder to find. They want to get a new chopper on a lease-to-own basis. Mary Burton is with Zungazi O'Day, Inc. She says the police helicopter still causes trauma.
If they just posted why they're flying around these neighborhoods, that might lessen people's distrust with the police department and with the ghetto bird flying around their house. because I know it scares me when I see it, and I see it almost daily.
Police say the helicopter only responds to specific calls. They don't know how much a new one will cost, but hope to have it sometime next year. A Manitoba judge calls a 15-year sentence for a high-ranking Winnipeg fentanyl trafficker fit and proper. Curtis Dat-Iroquois, now 25, was sentenced last month for his work in an interprovincial drug trafficking operation. He was arrested in November 2021 after Winnipeg police seized large amounts of fentanyl, meth, and cocaine from his car. In a written decision published last week, Court of King's Bench Justice Richard Saul said the defense's suggestion of a 9-year sentence was far too low. Saul says sentences for high-level traffickers should be between 15 years to life behind bars. The Crown prosecutor asked for 15 years since Dat-Iroquois is still young with no previous criminal record. And summer is over, and that means it's back to the legislature for Manitoba's MLAs. The NDP government is going to focus part of its effort this fall sitting on getting its omnibus budget bill passed into law. That bill, which enacts many of the changes in the spring budget, has come under fire from the opposition PCs for being too broad. The government inserted non-budget items into that bill, including a measure to forbid employers from using replacement workers during labor disputes. You can find more on these stories and the latest news as it develops throughout the day on our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you very much, Heather.
You're welcome.
That is Heather Wells at our CBC News Desk. Marcy just had to quickly head out early to get to an appointment, so I'm going to be closing off Abby and I the last couple of minutes here of the show. Quick look at traffic. John called right outside Mulvey School on Wolseley at Maryland there. There's a number of emergency vehicles blocking the entirety of Wolseley, so look out for that. As well, northbound Kenniston got a call from Water Truck Mike, who's doing some work there today, actually starting at 9 a.m. between Corden and Tuxedo. They'll be doing work on the median lane on northbound Kenniston between Corden and Tuxedo, so that's going to be lasting all day, he says, so it might be a little bit congested, particularly when you head home this afternoon. If you see anything else, give me a call on the CBC commuter line, 204-788-3093. I'll be back tomorrow to take some calls. Abby, what's going on in the weather?
Looking at the southern regions, we're seeing mostly cloudy skies, a slight chance of showers and breezy conditions in most of the regions. We're going to see highs ranging from 15 in Gimli to 18 in Steinbach, while the northern areas will see flurries and cooler temperatures, with Thompson getting to 5 degrees and Churchill staying around 2 degrees. For the city, we're currently at 11. We've had light rain earlier. Today, we're going to see a mix of sun and clouds. Around the noon period, it will still be quite windy coming from the northwest and then gusting up all the way to 50. The high for the city, we're going to get to 17 today.
Thank you very much, Abby.
Thank you.
Abby Adeyemi, he is our studio technician. Big thanks to Kevin Nipatebo, our YouTube producer. Nelly Gonzalez is the show's producer of Current Affairs. And Leif Larson is the senior producer of audio. Faith Funda will be in the host chair the next couple days here on Information Radio. And the rest of the team will also be here as well. Thanks for joining us this morning. We'll see you tomorrow.